In the left corner, Megalodon, considered the largest and most dangerous predator in the aquatic world. It has a reputation as a cold-blooded hunter who can break a fishing boat with one bite. We're gonna need a bigger boat. But what if he comes face-to-face with another giant water monster? In the right corner, Mosasaurus, an ancient dinosaur reptile which existed about 80 million years ago on the vast Atlantic Ocean. Their diet was large fish, giant turtles, other Mosasauruses, and even birds. So glad I'm not on the menu, ha ha! But to find out if this reptile can defeat the most massive shark that ever existed, we'll compare these monsters in several categories. Let's start with size. Megalodon became extinct 3 million years ago, but is still considered the largest and most dangerous predator in the ocean. We can only guess at the real size of Megalodon. The only remains found of this giant shark are teeth and vertebrae. Kinda sounds like my grandma. She used to leave her teeth everywhere. But with the help of calculations and computer modeling, scientists have concluded that Megalodon's length could be about 50 feet. It's like a New York City subway car, except it won't try to eat you. Now let's have a look at the right corner. The size of the Mosasaurus also remains a subject of discussion, but it's believed that the average length of this monster was about 36 feet. That's the size of a school bus. But in 2016, scientists found the largest Mosasaurus ever. Its length was 59 feet. Compare this to the tallest person ever, 8 feet. Mosasaurus was 7 times larger. Hey, nice job on the quick math. The first win goes to the Mosasaurus, 1-0 in favor of the ancient reptile. The next category is weight. Let's start with the fighter in the left corner. The most enormous individuals of the Megalodon species had an incredible weight from 27 to 59 tons. This is more than the weight of an empty Boeing 737, without the snacks and beverages. Although the Mosasaurus is longer, its weight isn't that much because of its body shape. Adult species could reach 14 tons, which is half the weight of a Megalodon. For comparison, an adult blue whale can weigh up to 100 tons or even more. But whales are not the peak predators like Megalodon and Mosasaurus. In this category, Megalodon wins and gets its first point. It's now 1-1. Let's move on to the next category, speed and agility. Megalodon wasn't the fastest fish on Earth. He could reach a speed of about 11 miles per hour. For example, the quickest sea creature is the sailfish. It can swim 68 miles per hour. But this didn't prevent Megalodon from becoming the top predator in the aquatic world. The average person only swims at a speed of 2 miles per hour. But the Achilles heel of Megalodon is agility and maneuverability. In fact, Meg is a 50-ton truck, so he can't turn and change direction quickly. If he's going to attack, he has only one chance to hit, because if he has to go for a second lap, his prey will have the opportunity to scoot. The exact speed with which Mosasaurus could swim is unknown, but scientists think he borrowed his swimming style from the eel. He would push off with his tail and steer with small side fins. This provided him with incredible maneuverability. In theory, this could help him jump out of the water, just like a scene from Jurassic World. But to know the exact speed with which Mosasaurus could swim, we need to find more remains of this ancient reptile. Right now, the point in the speed and maneuverability category goes to Megalodon, 2-1 in favor of the biggest shark of all time. Our next category is fighting instruments. First, we'll look at Megalodon's arsenal, his giant teeth. They were extremely sharp because of their triangular shape, and they reach 7 inches long. Megalodon's teeth are considered to be the largest that ever existed, and it had 250 of them. They were placed in 5 rows and could easily penetrate the thick skin of whales and other ancient creatures. In addition, the jaw itself was incredible. It was 6.5 feet wide. The average person could easily fit in there standing at full height. Boy, wouldn't that fall into the stupid selfie category. The muscle strength combined with the giant maw gave Megalodon one of the strongest bites on our planet. The primary tool of the Mosasaurus is the jaw. Its jaw held 40 to 50 sharp and massive teeth. They were conical in shape to penetrate even the thickest skin, like a knife through butter. and the jaw itself was similar to a snake's. So Mosasaurus was able to swallow colossal prey without even chewing. In some of the discovered remains of Mosasaurus, perfectly preserved remains of fish were found, and they were 3 feet long. The Mosasaurus head was a little over 2 feet long, and although this jaw wouldn't be enough to swallow Megalodon as a whole, it could bite off a pretty big piece of him or even just rip off its tail. For this ultimate combat tool, the Mosasaurus gets the point. The score is tied 2-2. The last category is combat skills. Although Megalodon has a giant mass and sharp teeth, he reached the top of the food chain for another reason: intelligence. Scientists found many remains of whales with scars from Megalodon's teeth. These findings have helped to understand the hunting tactics of this giant shark. It turned out that Meg could find weaknesses in other marine creatures and knew where their vital organs were located. Other remains had many fractures. Apparently, the victim had experienced Megalodon's 50-ton ram. It could easily have broken through concrete walls. The whales didn't stand a chance. With the help of strategy and tactics, Megalodon could have handled prey much bigger than himself. He could attack the whale's tail and fins until he was completely immobilized. And then, when the victim was defenseless, well, like they say, dinner is served. Unlike sharks that love to ambush, Mosasauruses were quite aggressive. Scientists found many remains of the Mosasauruses with traces of teeth marks from their own species. Whether they fought for food or territory is unknown, but we know for sure that their fights were brutal. The remains had many fractures, but they didn't ram their victims. No, they grabbed its head and actively bit and struggled, breaking its bones. Such a technique is used by modern crocodiles. Also, the Mosasauruses had excellent vision, which gave them a chance to see the victim from afar and attack unexpectedly. Before we move on to the fight, a bonus round! Audience Sympathy Prize. Megalodon has appeared in many different movies, TV series, and comics, and each of its appearances has inspired fear in the audience. He really has a reputation as an ideal predator, and I would bet my money on him. Mosasaurus, on the other hand, doesn't have many appearances in popular culture, but the scene where he eats a great white shark in one bite surprised spectators around the world. So this dinosaur has the potential to become a star. This, of course, doesn't affect the outcome of the fight. Oh, there's the gong. Now we'll find out who will win this fight. Opponents meet in the waters off the coast of North America. Mosasaurus noticed Megalodon from far away and attacked first. However, his teeth are not big enough, and he barely hurts the Meg. Now, the giant shark is attacking the reptile. Mosasaurus is very agile, and he easily dodges the slow blows of the Megalodon. They break apart. It's time to change tactics, and Megalodon decides to go for a trick. Mosasaurus is a reptile, though a huge one. This means it breathes air and swims underwater only by holding its breath. Meg begins to descend deeper, luring Mosasaurus into a trap. In deep water, the ancient reptile feels uncomfortable and begins to make mistakes. Megalodon attacks fins and tail, depriving the enemy of mobility. Once the Mosasaurus loses its tail, the battle ends. Oops. Megalodon has again proved that he is the king of the seas, and he deservedly stands at the top of the food chain. The Megalodon was the biggest shark to ever live. Not only that, it's one of the biggest fish and the largest predator in Earth's history. They've been known to reach lengths of up to a whopping 70 feet. That's over 3 times longer than the biggest great white shark on record. The females have also been found to be around twice the size of the males. The Megalodon could swallow a small car without it even touching its teeth, if cars had been around then. Its teeth could grow to over 7 inches long. It looks like we're going to need a bigger boat, and best make it steel-plated, as this shark can easily gnaw its way through ships. The underwater terror could bite a ship clean in half, with the highest bite force ever calculated for any animal, living or extinct. The force of its ferocious bite was up to 40,000 pounds. That's around 108,000 times the strength of a human's and 10 times the force of a modern crocodile's bite. Its chomp is so strong that it makes the T-Rex's bite look about as powerful as my granny's after she's taken her dentures out. In fact, the Meg was so big and powerful that it had no natural predators. It was the uncrowned king of the seas, swimming freely from ocean to ocean. This cosmopolitan creature was found all over the world, from America to Europe and Australia to Japan, assuming there were countries back then. Meg fossils have been found on every continent except Antarctica. Everybody skips Antarctica. Science tells us that the Megalodon went extinct over 3.6 million years ago. But could they still be alive at the deepest depths of the ocean? Only around 80% of the ocean has been explored, and its deepest point, the Mariana Trench, is over 7 miles down. So who knows what's lurking at the bottom? If you did manage to make it down, it is unlikely that you'll run into a Meg, though. The sharks, like us, preferred warmer coastal waters. Deep ocean living would be too cold for the beasts, and food would be scarce. Their entire bodies would also have to evolve to avoid being squished by the enormous water pressure down there. It's unlikely they're still around, but not impossible. Some good news, if you do run into one, is that the shark is pretty unlikely to eat you. You are way too small a meal for the Megalodon, even if you have a couple of friends with you. This guy eats whales that are over 50 feet long. If you're having a beach party, though, it's a different story. In a beach full of swimmers, the shark very well might creep up, scooping several humans into its giant mouth without even chewing. But wait, let's rewind. How does the shark take down a 50-foot whale? It first bites off its fins, making the whale unable to swim away. It then casually munches it down piece by piece. Because of their size, sharks had to consume over a ton of food every single day just to sustain themselves, like me. All that food made the Megalodon extremely heavy. They range from anywhere between 50 to over 100 tons. For context, that's around the same as 7 to 16 adult male African elephants. To fit all this food in, their jaws had to open pretty wide. A Megalodon's jaw could span 9 by 11 feet wide. That's easily big enough to swallow 2 adult humans side by side. The fearsome name Megalodon comes from 2 Greek words, mega meaning big and odont meaning tooth. So combined, they mean what? Big tooth. And it certainly lives up to its name. Just one of its chompers is the same size as a human head. It had 276 humongous teeth in total across 5 terrifying rows. In all of history, only a couple of saber-toothed cats and the T-Rex had consistently bigger teeth. Now that's a showdown I'd like to watch. The Megalodon vanished millions of years ago, leaving only huge teeth to be found by modern archaeologists. They literally disappeared with very few traces left. Scientists believe that, over time, sea levels dropped and the ocean temperatures went down rapidly. Over a third of all marine life was wiped out as the oceans cooled, and a number of animals at the bottom of the food chain plummeted. This had a catastrophic effect on the hungry predators at the top. Sorry guys. It became way too cold for these sun-loving sharks too, which made it difficult for them to reproduce since they gave birth in warm waters. The Megalodon is usually described as a sort of giant great white shark, but this is just a common myth. In fact, the ancestors of today's great white existed at the same time as the Meg. But they weren't best buddies, and were even in competition with each other. The great white shark was a better hunter, using its smaller size and agility to snap up the Meg's prey quickly. They were also known to eat Meg pups, who were only half their size. This didn't help the whole extinction thing. Even infant Megalodons were huge, coming in at just under 7 feet. While a great white was no match for an adult Meg in a head-to-head fight, they sure weren't scared of stealing their food. This only left the bigger fish and whales for the Meg, but its food supplies began to run out as the whales swam to the cooler new seas. The whales adapted to prefer the colder temperatures, leaving our friend the Meg behind. The Megalodons either starved or were frozen into extinction by the Ice Age. Rather than a great white, the Megalodon is more like a modern bull shark. It had a short snout, flat lower jaw, and huge pectoral fins to support its massive weight and size. As scary as they are, these sharks were actually caring family guys. Several Megalodon nursery areas have been discovered in Florida, Maryland, and Panama. They gave birth to their young in shallow water environments. We know this from discovering loads of tiny Megalodon teeth found in these areas. Gee, I wonder if they had nannies too. But how come there are so many Megalodon teeth out there for us to analyze? Well, due to their messy, aggressive eating habits, sharks regularly lose their teeth. They lose a set of teeth every 1 to 2 weeks. That's 40,000 teeth in a lifetime. They must rake in a fortune from the tooth fairy. Because of this, their teeth were continuously raining down to the ocean floor. Luckily for us, they're also the hardest part of a shark skeleton, which is why so many teeth have survived and become fossilized. It's fair to say that the first discoveries of the Meg's teeth confused people. Early discoverers thought the Meg's teeth were petrified tongues of ancient serpent creatures. They even used to call them tongue stones. It's also a common myth that the Megalodon was around at the same time as the dinosaurs, although this would have been pretty cool. The dinosaurs were wiped out around 66 million years ago, but the Megalodons came much later. The oldest Meg fossil is only around 23 million years old, but it's tricky to pinpoint the exact date. After all, calendars weren't invented yet. They became extinct way before humans even evolved. The earliest Homo sapiens, which is a fancy name for the first humans, emerged about 2.5 million years ago. But what if the Megalodon shark didn't go extinct? Whale populations have dropped drastically since these guys were last around, so there'd be way fewer whales for them to chomp down on. Whales have also gotten a lot smarter and learned new defensive moves, making them way harder to take down. It's estimated that they ate around 12 tons of food each day. If they were still around and eating that much, they'd be forced to eat smaller fish, and there'd be barely enough big fish for us humans to survive on. The naughty Megalodons would also be able to track fishing boats and steal the fish that they worked hard to collect. It's safe to say we'd see a lot less fish in the aisles of your neighborhood supermarket. As our ocean temperatures are heating up again, the sharks would also thrive and reproduce faster than ever. There'd be more and more of these giant eating machines in the water, reducing our fish supply even more. It would also cause massive problems for cargo ships and cruising vessels. Imagine coming into contact with one of these bad boys while you're sunbathing on the deck. Even beachgoers would be hard hit. Megalodons give birth in shallow waters, so many of our favorite beaches would quickly become dangerous shark nursing grounds. Hey, where did that beach volleyball game go? They were playing just a moment ago.
The Meg, aka Megalodon, roamed the oceans long after dinosaurs were wiped out by the Great Meteorite. It was one of the largest and most dangerous hunters that have ever lived on Earth, as well as the biggest shark. But then, about 3.6 million years ago, the last of its kind disappeared from our planet, leaving only huge teeth for modern archaeologists to keep finding. There are a few theories about why it could have happened, but scientists might have found the true reason. The Megalodon, which means big tooth, was the largest shark ever to exist. It reportedly lived around 20 to 3.6 million years ago and was truly enormous. Its bite was more powerful than that of a T-Rex, and likely any other powerful predator that has ever roamed this planet. It's probably not surprising since this marine creature had extremely strong jaws that could span from 9 to 10 feet wide. That's enough to swallow 2 grown-up people side by side. The jaws were also lined with 276 teeth, and they reached 7 inches in length. That's as long as a small hedgehog. Once these teeth got worn down, the shark got rid of them and grew new ones. Such large sedated teeth helped the Meg to eat meat easily. The shark itself could grow up to 59 feet long. That's twice the length of a London double-decker bus. The animal was also pretty heavy. While a fully grown T-Rex weighed about 8 tons, the weight of a large Megalodon could be more than 30 tons. With no competitors, the enormous shark was the real king of the oceans. It hunted other sharks, large fish, and even whales. Then why did such a magnificent creature disappear from the face of the Earth? The previous theories mentioned the great white shark. The Megalodon is usually described as some gigantic version of this marine animal. And this is a common mistake made because most people think these creatures were related. But in reality, the Meg looked more like a modern bull shark. Its snout was snout, its lower jaw was rather flat, and long and massive pectoral fins supported the animal's weight. But what's more important, the ancestors of today's great whites existed at the same time as the Megalodon. Now, with great size comes great clumsiness. And although the Meg was huge and powerful, it was also not as nimble as smaller and quicker great white sharks. Great whites could have rivaled a Megalodon for food, and were often more successful hunters thanks to their agility. They couldn't fight the Meg openly, but were fast enough to steal its food. So according to this theory, The only food left for the Megalodon were whales and equally big marine animals. Grown-up megs could easily catch such beasts, but their offspring were much smaller and more vulnerable than their parents. Could smaller sharks have used this to their advantage? Maybe while megasharks were still little, they became a meal for great whites, as well as bull and tiger sharks. Even at those times, a great white shark could reach the length of 20 feet, while a megalodon kid was definitely smaller. But even if there had been no open confrontation between young megalodons and smaller grown-up sharks, meg kids wouldn't have been able to find food for themselves to grow to adulthood. The reason is the same. The population of other sharks was growing, and they were rivaling each other and the meg for convenient food. The more great whites and other sharks appeared in the oceans, the less food remained for young monster sharks. Eventually, they probably starved. But it's just one of the theories that try to explain why the meg went extinct, and here's another one. A new study has shown that the meg was most likely a warm-blooded predator able to regulate its body temperature, and that might have been the reason why this species disappeared with time. Scientists analyzed isotopes of the tooth enamel of the megalodon and concluded that the animal could easily maintain a body temperature that was around 13 degrees F warmer than the temperature of the surrounding water. Such a temperature difference is much greater than what other sharks living at the same time as the meg had, and it's large enough for the ancient predator to be classified as warm-blooded. These days, most fish are cold-blooded. Their body temperature is the same as the surrounding water, but some sharks, like mackerel sharks, keep the temperature of all parts of their bodies a bit warmer than the surrounding water. But it doesn't make them completely warm-blooded because they simply store heat generated by their muscles. And in mammals, body temperature is regulated by a special region of the brain called the hypothalamus. Anyway, the meg's warmer body allowed the animal to move faster, deal with cold water better, and spread out all over the world. But eventually, it might have led to a disaster. The Megalodon lived during the Pliocene epoch, pronunciation. It began approximately 5.3 million years ago and finished 2.5 million years ago. During that period, global cooling occurred. It also caused the changes in sea level, which the Megalodon probably didn't survive. The main problem for the predator was to maintain an energy level allowing its body temperature to remain elevated. But to do it, the animal had to eat a lot, and I mean it. But it was a challenging task in a time of changing marine ecosystems, and while competing with newcomers, such as the great white shark. If this theory is true, then the amount of energy the meg had to use to remain warm could have contributed to its extinction. This new information is very important to us. It shows that many marine predators in modern oceans might be experiencing the effects of ongoing climate change too. By the way, have you heard that there have been several cases when people were sure they had seen the meg? Or at least some similar extremely large monsters. And these sightings happened relatively recently. For example, in July 1916, the New Jersey coast of the US was terrified by a series of shark attacks. They happened during an oppressive heat wave when hundreds of beachgoers tried to find shelter from the heat near the water. People described the culprit that had caused all that havoc as a giant shark, much bigger than any regular one. Since then, scientists have been debating which shark species was involved in those accidents. The most popular guesses have been the bull shark and the great white. A picture of a huge shark roaming the Pacific Ocean not far from Guadalupe Island appeared in 1999. The creature was nicknamed Deep Blue. It could be distinguished from others by a wavy pattern separating its gray back and white belly. But even though some people claimed it could be the infamous Megalodon, experts came to the conclusion it was a female white shark, the largest ever seen. The average length of a male white shark is 11 to 13 feet. Females are bigger, up to 15 or 16 feet, but Deep Blue reached more than 20 feet in length. No wonder people were confused. For the last time, Deep Blue was spotted in 2013 near the western coast of Mexico's Baja California. But look, there's another jumbo shark, and you can meet it in any part of the world. The largest specimens can reach 40 feet long and weigh about 5 or even 6 tons. Could it be, if not the Megalodon itself, but one of its relatives? Again, a wrong guess. That's the basking shark. This animal prefers subpolar seas, with temperatures not higher than 58 degrees F. Even though some of these animals do migrate to warmer places. Like whale sharks, basking sharks are harmless and don't attack snorkelers or divers. These creatures have loads of small teeth, but they don't use them when feeding. Instead, they swim with their huge mouths open and swallow plankton. A grown-up basking shark can filter nearly 2,000 tons of water per hour.
For years, we've thought the Megalodon was just a big shark, which is scary enough. After all, it could have eaten a creature the size of a whale in just 5 bites. Estimates indicate that the largest shark that ever lived had been around 59 feet long, which is a reasonable size and explains a lot. But the scientific community was wrong. Very wrong. Now, scientists have proven that megalodons could grow up to 80 feet long, which is the same as a 6-story building. The creature would have certainly been dozens of times bigger than you if you had seen it underwater. These giants ruled the ancient oceans between about 20 million and 3 million years ago. And even though it was a long time ago, they've left a lasting impression, becoming the protagonists of many movies. And scientists continue to search for answers about their life. Thanks to this, we still occasionally find their fossils. But the thing is, no one has ever found a complete skeleton. All we have are scattered vertebrae, a few scales, and, of course, those massive, razor-sharp teeth. The most complete piece we know of is a 36-foot section of a megalodon's spine. It was once part of the trunk of the animal's body. So, to assess just how big the megalodon was, experts compared its fossils to more than 150 species of sharks, both those that are alive and those that have gone extinct, to get the most realistic result possible. If the megalodon had had the proportions of a regular shark, it would have had a 6-foot head and a 12-foot tail. It would have also stretched 54 feet from nose to fin. But these measurements are way off the mark. The largest megalodon vertebra ever found is 9 inches in diameter, which makes it 3 inches larger than the largest vertebra of a typical shark. And if we follow these proportions, that megalodon was a whopping 80 feet long. To better understand how giant this is, just think of 2 school buses lined up end to end. For a long time, it was very common to think that the megalodon was just a giant great white shark. And it makes sense, right? I mean, both would have had large, terrifying, serrated teeth. But that was another completely wrong idea. Now, we know that megalodons were actually much more slender and aerodynamic than the modern great white shark. Their body shape was built to cut through the water with much less resistance, minimizing the effects of gravity in the sea, letting them glide effortlessly through the ocean. Now, if Megalodon wasn't just another great white shark, what other animal of the same species was it most similar to? Surprise! In fact, it had more in common with the modern lemon shark. This species has robust and powerful bodies, 2 large dorsal fins, and blunt snouts, which makes them really fast and agile hunters, like prehistoric predators. In other words, while thinking about the Megalodon, you can imagine a giant, turbocharged lemon shark. This is the most modern comparison of the Megalodon with another animal, unless scientists find a complete skeleton of the ancient shark. But it's not common to find complete shark skeletons. They're rare because they're actually made not of bone but of soft, coated cartilage, like the stuff in human noses and ears. Their teeth are the boniest part of their bodies, and it's the reason why we've found so many of them. Yet, a complete skeleton is like scattered puzzle pieces to us. There's no solid bone to hold these pieces together, so the whole thing is very vulnerable to falling apart. Still, it's actually possible for an entire shark skeleton to survive. In these cases, very specific natural phenomena have to come into play, The skeleton needs to get buried super fast in mud or sediment, free of any kind of scavengers and away from ocean currents. Otherwise, it simply disintegrates before it can fossilize. Interestingly, although the sea is the home of these animals, it is possible to find their skeletons on land too. Millions of years ago, a big portion of today's dry land was submerged, teeming with marine life. Then, in certain places, sedimentary minerals and specific biological conditions of the seabed allowed the fossilization of sharks in marine rocks. Today, those are desert rocks that ensure the preservation of shark fossils. But in any case, searching for a shark tooth in a desert is like looking for a needle in a haystack. But finding an entire fossilized skeleton embedded in a rock is like hitting the jackpot. Another unexpected discovery is that these prehistoric sharks were not born small and cute like regular baby sharks. A newborn megalodon could reach almost 13 feet in length. That's more than twice the height of the average human. Imagine a shark the size of a boat from the moment it's born. Now, although we don't have all the information about the giant of the seas, it's a fact that it's one of the most famous animals in pop culture worldwide. Not only has it inspired several movies, but some people also insist that the Megalodon is still alive. Scientists say it's not. The Megalodon didn't survive the test of time, and it would be impossible for such a giant creature to dwell in the seas without us noticing it. First, it was a super predator. It hunted whales, dolphins, and other large marine animals. If the Meg was still around, its presence would completely change the balance in the oceans. It would have huge impacts on marine ecosystems, regulating populations and influencing the size and behavior of the ancient shark's prey. A good example is whales. They wouldn't have grown so big if the Meg still hunted in the oceans. This only happened because there was no super predator in the way. If the giant shark was still in our oceans, species like the blue whale would be tiny, as they would need to develop and adapt to be able to escape constant attacks. The lives of the workers of the sea would also be completely different. Fishers would have to avoid certain areas, ships would change routes, and even maritime tourism would be risky. Going for a swim and coming across a shark over 65 feet long? Not worth the risk. Plus, if the Megalodon was still out there, we would have some proof. Commercial fishing catches millions of sharks every year, and a monster of this size would not go unnoticed. Not to mention that with all of today's technology such as drones, satellites, and submarines at our disposal, someone would have already recorded an encounter with this living legend. By the way, most sharks, like most fish, are cold-blooded. But the reality for Megalodon was different. This giant was able to keep its body warmer than the surrounding ocean. This gave it an advantage over other sea creatures, allowing it to remain fast and active even in colder waters. It was a survival advantage that other animals of its kind did not acquire during their evolution. One of the most famous theories is that the Meg lives in the Mariana Trench, but scientists are sure that it doesn't make any sense. This region is poor in food and has many tiny creatures, which would not be nearly enough to sustain a large predator. In addition, there's a lot of research studying countless sharks that live in the ocean depths, and none of them come close to the size of the Megalodon. So, does the Megalodon still exist? Definitely not, but that doesn't mean it isn't any less mysterious and fascinating.
Within the ocean waters, somewhere in the southern hemisphere, a ghostly black shadow looms deep down in the depths. Suspiciously swimming far below, the Megalodon is hunting for its next meal. With the appearance of a great white shark, but 3 times the size of the largest ever recorded, its intimidating design has evolved over millions of years, creating the ultimate natural predator. For millions of years, the intimidating evolutionary traits have gone unchecked and unopposed. With its keen senses, it detects its prey within 3 miles. As it swims below, it's been following an unsuspecting sea turtle that's slowly paddling above on a long voyage. The Megalodon stalks the turtle, ensuring it makes its move toward the turtle at the right moment, swimming upward at 11 miles per hour, intending to immobilize the turtle by ramming it. As it approaches, the Megalodon's adept senses notice something else lurking nearby. Pausing its pursuit of the turtle, it adjusts and turns to face another, much larger object. The Megalodon may be the largest marine predator to have ever lived on Earth, rightfully feared by all creatures within these waters, but not today. There is a newcomer to these parts, one that has a similar reputation and matches the Megalodon in ferocity. This unknown creature intends to contest these hunting grounds. The challenger is the Leviathan. As the sea turtle takes this opportunity to swim away as fast as it's able, these two apex predators size each other up from a distance, preparing to establish who will reign as the supreme king of the sea. The Megalodon dominated the ocean sometime between 3 to 23 million years ago, spreading to all corners of the globe, within seas surrounding Europe, Africa, the Americas, and Australia. Its focus is mainly on offshore areas where prey would be prominent, hunting sea turtles, whales, seals, dolphins, and other sharks. Its range was long, traveling between coastal and oceanic waters throughout different stages of its life cycle. Given that the territory they cover grows with each year they live, and the wide range of prey available to them, the Megalodon's size can reach up to 67 feet in length. Armed with thick and robust teeth made for grabbing their prey and biting through bone, they have a 41,000-pound bite force, which is almost 4 times stronger than that of a T-Rex. Their tactics include ambushing their prey from below while ramming them into submission. With larger prey, they aim to disable them by biting at the fins, and once immobilized, biting through their chest. Their jaw is made up of around 276 frightening serrated-edged teeth that are 7 inches long and jagged at the sides. The Megalodon's competitor, the Leviathan, is armed with 22 large teeth of its own that come in various sizes, some up to 12 inches long. All are capable of piercing through its target. Excluding tusks in comparison, these are among the largest teeth that have ever existed on any known animal. Although it hasn't reached an overall equivalent size to the Megalodon, its length is equally impressive, as it's capable of growing as large as 57 feet long. Mainly living within the southern hemisphere, they've only been around for a short while, existing from 9 to 10 million years ago. Although it hunts similar prey to the Megalodon, it has a different strategic method of hunting, chasing its prey, tiring it out to the point of exhaustion, and then finishing it off by ramming it with its head and then biting it. It also has a more adaptive trait in its arsenal, its much larger brain. Being a warm-blooded mammal, it possesses superior intelligence, ensuring quicker thinking, with the ability to change its tactics at crucial moments. The Megalodon acts on sheer instinct, and that has worked consistently for the past few million years. But will it work now? Although there are millions of years of difference between when these two behemoths existed and patrolled the seas, they shared a short period of time in history. But when they did overlap one another's territory, they created some of the most epic conflicts that have ever been had on Earth. This Megalodon's turf has never been in contention until now. As the Leviathan approaches, observing the much larger Megalodon, it's hesitant to make the first move, as generally, anything that it has come across before attempts to escape immediately, causing a chase to begin. The Megalodon, however, never flees. The Megalodon's instincts ensure it will act overconfident, and, as expected, it makes the first move. It swims at full speed, gliding through the water, aiming to ram the Leviathan. The Leviathan has no other choice but to do the same, rather than turning to flee and leaving itself unprotected. The two aquatic giants slice through the water on their way to meet fin to fin. The Megalodon is puzzled that its foe is not turning tail to swim away, but it continues, as it has no reason to doubt victory from this tried and true tactic that has never failed before. As the Megalodon approaches, it quickly turns to swim downward. It's faster and more agile than its opponent. It maneuvers below, gaining some distance. The Leviathan moves much slower and is unable to turn in time as the Megalodon veers upward and rams it on its soft underbelly, attempting to force it into submission. There is little effect due to its size, and the Leviathan continues to turn, but it's far too slow as it attempts to bite with a desperate hope to grasp its attacker with its powerful jaws. The Megalodon easily swims away from its toothy trap, quickly retaliating by taking aim at the tail and fins, chipping away at little pieces as it bites, then quickly retreats, continuing this routine over and over, trying to disable the Leviathan's defenses. This tactic is effective, but it's taxing on the Megalodon as it's running out of energy. Still, it pushes hard to try and finish the hunt, using all the energy at its disposal, expecting that the struggle will not go on much longer. The Leviathan is outmatched. The speed of its combatant is far superior, and the constant chipping away at the fins and tail is becoming too costly. Upon realizing its abilities are surpassed and that it's helpless to resist the constant array of attacks, it attempts to swim away, maneuvering as it flees, desperately trying to obtain some distance from its aggressor. The Megalodon follows the Leviathan during its attempted escape, realizing this is a prime opportunity to finish the job. The Leviathan swipes its large tail as it swims, trying to repel any further attacks from the Megalodon. It hits the Megalodon and stops it in its path with every advance. As the Leviathan continues to swim away, it sustains energy with ease. The Megalodon, on the other hand, is quickly running out. The Leviathan's strategy is working as it continues to swim at a relaxed pace. The Megalodon eventually runs out of energy, unable to continue at the same pace. But its instinctual arrogance won't let go. In its evolution, it has never really needed to develop the ability to flee. There has never been a reason for it. Over millions of years, it's never been outmatched, but that is all changing now. As they press on, it's clear that this is a contest between a marathon swimmer and a sprinter. The Leviathan continues to conserve its energy wisely, while the Megalodon, starved of energy, continues to pursue, becoming slower with every flick of its tail, to the point that it's unable to maintain the chase. Upon realizing its foe is exhausted, the Leviathan turns toward the Megalodon. Now, with dominant speed and maneuverability, it spreads its massive jaws, grasping the Megalodon's spine, ending the struggle and ensuring its victory. The challenger, the Leviathan, is a novice in comparison to the ancient Megalodon, but thanks to evolution, it ensured its eventual victory. This guaranteed its reign as the top predator, and arguably the greatest predator to have existed on Earth. Unfortunately, it would only be a short reign. No, there wouldn't be a larger or more superior foe to take the mantle. The world would begin to change. The Earth would soon go through a cooling trend, which would cause the main prey of the Leviathan to go extinct. And without a food source to sustain this hulking beast, it was unable to continue. But this led to other similar predatory animals taking its place. The killer whale, sharing similar characteristics, eventually replaced its predecessor. The Megalodon would then retake the mantle by default due to the absence of its victor. Continuing with its prior successful strategy and broader food source, it ensured its prolonged survival. But as the seas cooled even further and became much shallower worldwide, it became more difficult for the Megalodon to reproduce. The suitable shallow areas that were necessary for nurseries quickly disappeared, and without these, the Megalodon too eventually went extinct. And just like its former opponent, other smaller sharks were able to adapt to these changes in the shallower waters, ensuring a more diverse pool of predators to dominate the seas.
The largest and most ferocious predator to ever haunt the oceans, the Megalodon shark, dominated the seas for centuries before becoming extinct millions of years ago. However, scientists managed to discover very few remnants of the giant shark. Everything we know about the great sea beast we've learned thanks to fossils of its giant teeth, which are just about the size of the average human hand. Scientists estimated the size of the prehistoric shark using calculations based on the measurement of the length of a megalodon tooth. On average, the size of a megalodon shark was 33 feet long. The largest of the species could reach up to 58 feet long. However, these megasharks may have been even bigger than we ever thought. At the Florida Museum of Natural History, a group of students examined 3D printed replicas of megalodon teeth to calculate the shark's size using the tooth length method. But something was off. Each student calculated a different size for the same shark, with their estimates ranging from 40 feet to 180 feet. A lead paleontologist took a look at the students' equations. He realized that the method they used to calculate megalodon sizes for decades isn't that accurate at all. So they invented a new method to calculate the megalodon size based on the width of the megalodon tooth instead of its length. It turned out that the average megalodon would be around 65 feet long. It's almost double the size scientists previously thought, and would mean that the average megalodon is the length of 2 school buses. A megalodon skeleton has never been discovered. Shark skeletons are made mostly of cartilage, meaning that they decompose quickly. Luckily, sharks continuously shed and regrow teeth throughout their lives. One shark can go through 40,000 teeth in a single lifetime. Scientists have managed to study different types of shark species based on their teeth alone. The megalodon shark had around 276 teeth. When they fell out, these teeth landed in seabed, where they stayed for millions of years, fossilizing. Scientists found those teeth, and they're the only real record we have of the megalodon's existence. The word megalodon means giant tooth. Its tooth is around 7 inches long. For comparison, the largest tooth of a great white shark is only 3 inches long. To find a bigger set of choppers, you'd have to go back 65 million years to find the great Tyrannosaurus Rex, whose teeth measured a whopping 12 inches. Megalodon teeth have been discovered all over the world. It means that, unlike other marine animals of its time, the megalodon was intercontinental. Even today, most sharks and marine animals tend to stick to one sea or ocean. The megalodon shark swam freely around the world, moving between tropical and subtropical waters. Megalodon teeth have been found in every continent apart from the freezing cold waters of Antarctica. When a megalodon makes a starring appearance in a movie or TV show, it's portrayed to look like a giant version of a great white shark. Scientists previously believed that the megalodon and the great white shark both descended from one common ancestor. Still, it's not true. In fact, it's more likely that the megalodon was the arch-enemy of the great white shark's ancestor, the broad-toothed mako shark. That means Megalodon wouldn't have looked so similar to the great white after all. In reality, the Megalodon would have a shorter nose than the great white, along with longer pectoral fins to give the giant shark a stockier and more threatening build. Not only was the Megalodon the largest shark in the world, but it was also one of the biggest fish ever to exist. An apex predator of this size would have needed a huge diet to keep it moving. The Megalodon would have eaten 2,500 pounds of food every day. The Megalodon diet consisted of larger species of fish, dolphins, and even other species of sharks. Ancient fossilized whale bones with cut marks of Megalodon teeth have been discovered. It means Megalodons weren't intimidated by the size and tried to feast on the giant whales of the past. Scientists have used computer simulations to try and work out the hunting style of the ancient shark. Using this technology, scientists have discovered that the Megalodon's attack style was very different from that of modern-day sharks. Modern sharks dive straight for their prey's most vulnerable spot, for example, the soft underbelly of a seal. The Megalodon's teeth were uniquely suited to biting through tougher areas of cartilage. So, evidence suggests that a Megalodon would first chew the tougher fins of their prey, rendering them unable to swim away before launching into their final attack. The mouth of a Megalodon was around 10 feet wide and 9 feet tall, large enough for you to swim into without touching any teeth. However, we don't recommend that. Their mouths were so large a Megalodon could swallow a small car without even having to bite down on it. Research teams from Australia and the US collaborated to work out the biting power of the Megalodon using computer simulations. The results were terrifying. While the modern great white shark has the biting power of 1.8 tons of force, The Megalodon could easily chomp down on its prey with a biting power of 18.2 tons. The bite of the Megalodon would easily be able to cut through steel and overpower any other predator in the ocean. Scientists believe that the Megalodon has the most powerful bite of any creature that has ever existed. The Megalodon's bite would easily overpower the T-Rex, which has a biting force of 6 tons. Mysteriously, no one knows exactly when or how the Megalodon went extinct. However, several theories are floating around as to how this could be the case. The Megalodon had become extinct by the end of the Pliocene, which was a phase of global cooling that spanned over 5 million years and ended over 2.6 million years ago. New evidence suggests that the last Megalodon lived at least 3.6 million years ago, right in the middle of the Pliocene era. Another theory claims that these megasharks disappeared because of the changing Earth temperatures occurring during the Pliocene. As the Earth cooled down, the tropical waters of the world's oceans plummeted to colder temperatures. Scientists believe that this led to the extinction of a third of all large marine animals, meaning that the Megalodon's food source took a massive hit. Without much prey left to hunt, the Megalodon inevitably went extinct. Megalodon sharks would give birth to their pups in waters close to the shore. The shallow coastal waters provided a perfect nursery for the newborn sharks, keeping them distant from the larger predators that lurked in the open waters. As ice formed around the Earth's poles and sea levels dropped, these pupping grounds were destroyed. The Megalodon pups would have had no choice but to swim in the deep ocean waters, making them more vulnerable to dangerous predators. A new theory suggests that the explosion of a star, called a supernova, could be responsible for the extinction of the Megalodon. Around 2.6 million years ago, a supernova over 150 light-years away from Earth lit up the prehistoric sky and lingered there for months. A few hundred years after the supernova had faded, particles of cosmic energy from the star explosion plummeted to Earth. The energy particles carried dangerous amounts of radiation. Researchers believe that this radiation could cause the mass extinction of many marine animals, including the Megalodon. Radiation from the particles extended hundreds of yards down into the ocean and was more dangerous for bigger creatures than for smaller ones. The bigger the creature is, the more radiation they would absorb. The 60-foot-long Megalodon was large enough to absorb great amounts of radiation. Some people believe that the Megalodon is still alive today, lurking at the depths of the ocean waters. But it's unlikely to be true. Megalodons are a warm water species, which means they would be unable to survive in the cold waters of the deep ocean. Most of the Megalodon's potential prey live in shallower waters, meaning there would be very little for the Megalodon to eat at a deep sea level. Simply put, if there were an animal as big as the Megalodon still living today, we would have spotted it by now. It was one of the biggest creatures ever to roam the Earth. It was longer than your average school bus and could easily weigh more than 10 elephants combined. But where did it live? How did it end up having this size? And most importantly, why is it extinct nowadays? Let's find out. The Megalodon was the largest predator ever known in our planet's history. In terms of its location, the Megalodon lived practically in all waters on our globe, except near the poles. The reason why there were no Megalodon teeth found in Antarctica is probably that the gigantic creature adapted to only warm tropical and subtropical waters. The younger ones liked to keep to the shores, while full-grown adults preferred coastal areas, but they could easily move into the open ocean as well. How do we know the Megalodon was so widely spread? We can only presume, based on the fact that they discovered the most northern fossils off the coast of Denmark and the most southern in New Zealand. The discussion of how the Megalodon got this size is still open in the scientific community. They recently found out that not all the specimens from this fascinating species reach the same huge size. This has to do with a little something called the Bergmann's Rule, which says that the temperature of the surrounding environment affects the animal's body size because they either need to conserve or shed heat. The Megalodons that reach cooler waters probably needed more body weight to make sure they survived in low temperatures. On the contrary, those living in warmer waters had to be smaller to avoid burning up. But what did this enormous fish look like? Most modern depictions show the Megalodon resembling an enormous great white shark. But well, it seems it may not necessarily be correct. The Megalodon likely had a much shorter nose and a flatter jaw that looked almost squashed when compared with a great white shark. It also seems to have something in common with the modern blue shark: extra-long pectoral fins. They needed these to support their weight and size while navigating the planet's waters. Lastly, the lady megalodons, seem to have been about twice as large as the gentlemen. As for their offspring, even a small megalodon was enormous, at least 6.5 feet from nose to tail. How do we know that? Because specialists have stumbled upon megalodon nursery habitats in Panama, Maryland, the Canary Islands, and Florida. Even the piles of used diapers were enormous. Nah, not really. Surely the scariest aspect of the megalodon's looks was its mouth. I mean, think about it. Megalodon had whales for dinner, so it obviously needed to open its mouth wide enough. Scientists have estimated that its jaw would span a mind-boggling size, 9 by 11 feet wide. Just to paint you a better picture, that means it could have easily gulped down 2 adult people side by side. Wait, which 2 adults? Those impressive jaws also feature 276 teeth. Based on modern reconstructions of the force of its bite, it looks like it may have been one of the most, if not the most, powerful animals of prey ever to exist. For comparison, humans can have a bite force of around 1,300 newtons. Today, great white sharks have been estimated to be able to bite down with a force of over 18,000 newtons. The Megalodon tops all the records, with an estimated power of bite up to 10 times greater than that. It could basically crush a car with very little effort. Its teeth were also pretty amazing. Similar to sharks, the Megalodon was fast in replacing its broken or worn teeth. With 4 or 5 rows of teeth in its mouth, it basically acted like a conveyor belt, growing back damaged or missing teeth within about 48 hours. This means that an adult Megalodon probably would have grown several thousand teeth throughout its lifetime. It was nice of them to do that, though, since it's probably one of the reasons why Megalodon teeth are so common in fossil records, and we're able to study them properly. To maintain its impressive physique, the Megalodon had to eat somewhere around 2,500 pounds of food per day. Can't wrap your head around that? Well, it was the equivalent of 1¼ cows per day to survive. It's like if you had to eat 3,300 cans of tuna every day. I've used the word megalodon a lot, but have I mentioned where it comes from? When translated from Greek, it means giant tooth. Ah, those clever Greeks. However, this giant shark's full scientific name is a bit more complicated: Carcharocles megalodon. But are these gigantic predators actually extinct? We tend to believe so, but let's be honest for a second. We've come to know more about the surface of Mars than the depths of our oceans. Like, we've only explored 15% of our oceans altogether. Who knows what may be lying out there in the deep? Maybe some ancient predators? The Mariana Trench is the deepest oceanic trench on Earth. The Challenger Deep, its deepest part, is so deep that you could dip the whole of Mount Everest in there and it would still be over a mile above the surface. That's deep. If a megalodon or two ever needed a place to crash, that would be a discreet enough location. However, the Mariana Trench is not a particularly comfy place to be in. Because it's cold and steeped in total darkness and all. The temperatures here are around 36 degrees Fahrenheit all year round. And to top it all off, the pressure is 1,000 times stronger than at sea level. So it's safe to assume that if any megalodon is hiding in here, its teeth and bones might not be looking so good. Because of the intense pressure here in the Mariana Trench, proteins and calcium start to dissolve and disintegrate. That's why, for example, the Haddell snailfish, the deepest dwelling fish we've discovered, has evolved to feature flexible cartilage instead of bones. To survive here, the megalodon would also need to learn to navigate in complete darkness. That means they would have to either become luminescent or evolve to grow massive eyes like the giant squid. While it may sound like an intriguing and good idea for a movie script, most scientists don't think it's possible. Why? Well, most of them say it's because of the megalodon's size. Most foods that megalodons like to eat live in shallow ocean areas and not in the deep, deep sea. Specialists believe that if these animals were actually still roaming our waters, there's no way we wouldn't know about it. They would need to come up for dinner every now and then, right? Their food is also the most likely cause of why the Megalodon is not alive anymore. While some specialists believe the Megalodon became extinct because of a drop in the ocean water temperature, most scientists suggested that the shifting food chain dynamics may have been more to blame. Why? Because at some point, there was less and less of its primary food source, baleen whales, and at the same time, the numbers of its natural competitors, like smaller predatory sharks like the great white shark and whales, increased. The Megalodon did live on this planet a lot more than we did, and way back when we didn't even exist yet. They were here for nearly 70 times longer than we, modern humans, have, inhabiting the oceans for around 20 million years. Homo sapiens appeared around 300,000 years ago. The Megalodon managed to survive for so long mostly because of its unbeatable size. I mean, they can make a meal out of almost everything in the sea at the time. We may think about both of them as prehistoric creatures, but the Megalodons and the dinosaurs never coexisted on Earth. The dinosaurs probably died out about 66 million years ago. Megalodons seem to have appeared a bit later. That's because the oldest Megalodon fossils we have yet discovered are from the Miocene epoch, which began 23 million years ago. So long, Meg.
The Megalodon was the biggest shark to ever live. Not only that, it's one of the biggest fish and the largest predator in Earth's history. Over 3 times longer than the biggest great white shark on record, the females have also been found to be twice the size of the males. The Megalodon could swallow a small car without even touching its teeth, if cars had been around then. In fact, the Meg was so big and powerful that it had no natural predators. It was the uncrowned king of the seas, swimming freely from ocean to ocean. This cosmopolitan creature was found all over the world, from America to Europe and Australia and Japan, assuming there were countries back then. Meg fossils have been found on every continent except Antarctica. Everybody skips Antarctica. Science tells us that the Megalodon went extinct over 3.6 million years ago, but could they still be alive at the deepest depths of the ocean? The fearsome name, Megalodon, comes from 2 Greek words, megas, meaning big, and odont, meaning tooth. Combined, they mean big tooth, and it certainly lived up to its name. Just one of its chompers is the same size as a human head. It had 276 humongous teeth in total, across 5 terrifying rows. In all of history, only a couple of saber-toothed cats and the T-Rex had consistently bigger teeth. Now that's a showdown I'd like to watch. The Megalodon vanished millions of years ago, leaving only huge teeth to be found by modern archaeologists. Only around 80% of the ocean has been explored, so who knows what's lurking at the bottom. If you did manage to make it down, it's unlikely that you'll run into Meg though. The sharks, like us, preferred warm coastal waters. Deep ocean living would be too cold for the beasts, and food would be scarce. Their entire bodies would also have to evolve to avoid being squished by the enormous water pressure down there. It's unlikely that they're still around, but not impossible. Now, about the appearance of the Megalodon. Scientists believe it didn't look like a great white shark. The Megalodon belongs to a different fish family and most likely looked like a giant sand tiger shark. Flattened snout, small eyes. Its dorsal fin moved backward. The sand shark has 2 dorsal fins about the same size. The coloration is light brown with a white belly. It may have had brown-red spots like a sand shark all over its body. We used to think of the Megalodon as something scary from the first finds of its fossils. That was back in the Renaissance era. People found some teeth in the rocks. At first, these teeth were thought to be the tongues of dragons or snakes. And here is the first drawing of what the owner of these teeth supposedly looked like. A massive snout with a scary nose and a bunch of razor-sharp teeth. The Megalodon is usually described as a sort of giant great white shark, but this is just a common myth. In fact, the ancestors of today's great white existed at the same time as the Meg. But they weren't the best buddies and were even in competition with each other. The great white shark was a better hunter, using its smaller size and agility to snap up Meg's prey quickly. They were also known to eat meg pups, who were only half their size. This didn't help the whole extinction thing. We also have evidence that megalodons were brutal hunters, kings of the food chain. The first combat tool in their arsenal was the battering ram. The megalodon would take its prey by surprise. It had only one chance to hit it. If it missed, it would take too long for a second round. The maneuverability of the megalodon was comparable to a large truck. While a great white was no match for an adult meg in a head-to-head fight, they sure weren't scared of stealing their food. This only left the bigger fish and whales for the meg. But its food supplies began to run out as the whales swam to the cooler new seas. The whales adapted to prefer the colder temperatures, leaving our friend the meg behind. The megalodons either starved or were frozen into extinction by the Ice Age. Rather than a great white, the megalodon is more like a modern bull shark. It had a short snout, a flat lower jaw, and huge pectoral fins to support its massive weight and size. As scary as they are, these sharks were actually caring family guys. Several megalodon nursery areas have been discovered in Florida, Maryland, and Panama. They gave birth to their young in shallow water environments. We know this from discovering loads of tiny megalodon teeth found in these areas. I wonder if they had nannies too. But how come there are so many megalodon teeth out there for us to analyze? Due to their messy, aggressive eating habits, sharks regularly lose their teeth. They lose a set of teeth every 1 to 2 weeks. That's 40,000 teeth in a lifetime. They must rake in a fortune from the tooth fairy. Because of this, their teeth were continually raining down to the ocean floor. Luckily for us, they're also the hardest part of the shark skeleton, which is why so many teeth have survived and become fossilized. It's fair to say the first discoveries of the meg's teeth confused people. Early discoverers thought that the meg's teeth were petrified tongues of ancient serpent creatures. They even used to call them tongue stones. It's also a common myth that the megalodon was around at the same time as the dinosaurs, although this would have been pretty cool. The dinosaurs were wiped out around 66 million years ago, but the megalodons came much later. The oldest meg fossil is only around 23 million years old, but it's tricky to pinpoint the exact date. After all, calendars weren't invented yet. They became extinct way before humans even evolved. The earliest Homo sapiens, which is a fancy name for the first humans, emerged about 2.5 million years ago. But what if the megalodon shark didn't go extinct? Whale populations have dropped drastically since these guys were last around, so there'd be way fewer whales for them to chomp down on. Whales have also gotten a lot smarter and learned new defensive moves, making them way harder to take down. It's estimated that they ate around 12 tons of food each day. The Kraken is a colossal squid, a legendary sea monster, the biggest hunk of calamari you ever saw. And if this monster had existed, the world would have changed beyond recognition. The Kraken has powerful tentacles, solid muscles with suckers at the end. They're impossible to escape. The Kraken can break a ship in half, or just pull it down into the depths. But the worst thing about the Kraken is its size. According to old sailors' stories, its size is almost 10 soccer fields. Hey, maybe the Kraken could play soccer. The Kraken legends said the monster was so giant that sailors mistook it for a small island. In past centuries, it would have been impossible to defeat such a beast. If the Kraken existed in reality, it might have had offspring. Yeah. In all the world's oceans, there would be giant monsters that could sink any ship. It's unlikely that the Kraken would have competitors in its habitat, so its population would grow strongly. Since the Kraken is enormous, it would need a lot of food, so the population of other large sea animals would fall significantly. Blue whales, great white sharks, other giant squids, all the big sea creatures would be endangered. The Kraken belongs to the cephalopod genus. This species includes squid and octopus, some of the most intelligent creatures on the planet. The Kraken is a skilled hunter and will never fight in the open. Colossal squids live in deep waters and they have the largest eyes among all animals. The squid's eye is the size of a dinner plate. Thanks to this, they can see their prey from far away. Similarly, A Kraken would spot the ship much sooner than sonar could pick up the Kraken. It would always have the drop on you. Well, that's not good. In 1857, a squid beak was discovered on the coast of Denmark. Other huge squid remains were found in the Bahamas, and then scientists were convinced that gigantic squids existed. While colossal squid have been officially discovered since then, it's been more than 100 years and we still don't know what the max size they can grow to. The fact is, colossal squids are one of the most elusive creatures on Earth. They live in the depths of the ocean where it's challenging for scientists to reach. Any dive to a greater depth requires powerful, bulky equipment. Underwater bathyscaphs and cameras make a lot of noise and light, which squids notice from afar. They flee before we can see them. It's difficult to say if these huge squids were the size of a small island, but the truth is, we've only studied about 5% of the ocean. It may be that in its depths, monsters much more terrible than the Kraken swim.
Welcome to another fight of the century. The first participant enters the ring. It's the Megalodon. This shark lived 23 to 3 million years ago, and right now it holds the title of the ultimate hunter of all times. The second fighter is in the ring, and it's the Dunkleosteus. It lived around 350 to 380 million years ago, and was the largest fish of that time. These creatures swam all over the world and aroused fear with their armored heads and mighty jaws. The Megalodon has the title of one of the best hunters ever. Scientists have been able to figure out the ancient sharks' hunting tactics. They learned that these creatures somehow knew where their opponents' vulnerable spots were. They hit vital organs and were quick to disable their enemies. Sometimes these ancient sharks would also aim at the fins of larger sea creatures to immobilize them. It left the bigger opponents defenseless and unprotected. Another tactic the Meg used was a battering ram approach. The massive shark would crash into a whale, leaving it with no chance to escape. In other words, intellect and strategy were the Megalodon's most important skills. At that time, the Meg was the largest shark in the world, but in the oceans, there were creatures much larger than that, for example, whales, and the Meg didn't always have the courage to charge them. As for the Dunkleosteus, its trump card was its powerful jaws. Usually, the fish would swim toward a smaller animal. Then, in a split second, it would open its huge mouth, and the future meal would be pulled inside along with water. So long, Charlie! As the creature matured, its jaw shape changed. That's why, after being born, it could feed only on large soft fish. But as it aged, it got the ability to bite through tougher stuff. And later in life, the Dunkleosteus began to munch on sea creatures with hard shells, or basically any sea animal that existed at that time. Do you hear the sound of the gong? It means it's time for our sea monsters to meet face to face. They run into each other in the vast waters of the ocean. The Megalodon is the first to notice its opponent. The shark wants to use its battering ram approach against the Dunkleosteus' powerful armor, so it begins to speed up. But Dun dodges and avoids the collision. As the Meg turns around, the Dunkleosteus gets a chance to grab the shark by the tail. In a split second, its powerful jaws close on the shark's fin. Ow! But the fish's bony plates are too short to bite through the Meg's thick skin. The Megalodon begins to twist and wag its powerful tail to throw the Dunkleosteus off its body. It looks like a rodeo. Dun gets a powerful slap and is left stunned for a moment. The Megalodon uses this time to turn around. A couple of seconds later, the massive shark opens its huge jaw and ends the fight with one bite. So today, the Megalodon proves once again that it's worthy of its title as the best hunter of the SeaWorld. The ancient shark continues its wanderings in search of a stronger opponent. Stay tuned. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the fight of the century. In the left corner is the most famous dinosaur of all time, Tyrannosaurus Rex. Let's call her Mariana. She existed about 70 million years ago and was a true queen in today's North American territory. In the right corner is the nightmare of the sea, Megalodon. This one's named Megan. This species went extinct about 3 million years ago, but legends about it are still alive. It's the largest shark that ever existed, and it was a super predator in its time. Even though our T-Rex is not the biggest of its kind, Mariana still remains one of the most dangerous. But now, let's look at the size of her opponent. The size of the Megalodon is still a controversial thing. The fact is that the only remains of this ancient shark are teeth and vertebrae. So, scientists can only guess about the real size of this shark. But even by the most modest calculations, it's bigger than T-Rex. So, in the size category, Megalodon left no chance for T-Rex. The first point goes to the giant shark. But what about maneuverability? Mariana seems to be big and clumsy. However, T-Rex had excellent balance because of her massive tail and could turn and change direction very quickly. And look at her legs. Ooh, she clearly doesn't miss a leg day. Now, Megalodon was definitely the best predator in the aquatic world, not only because of its size and mass, but also because of its intelligence. Scientists have found traces of Megalodon's teeth on the remains of whales. They concluded that Megan aimed at her prey's weakest spots and knew where the vital organs were located. Other remains of Megalodon's victims had many bone fractures. This suggests that she was not shy about using her weight as a ram. Such a 50-ton ram could easily break through concrete walls. So, this shark had two main techniques: ram and ultimate bite. But the arsenal of T-Rex is much broader. Like a Megalodon, it had the strongest bite of its kind and also used a ram. Although its weight was not as big as Meg's, Mariana could reach a much higher speed, and its impact was much more powerful than that of a shark. On top of that, she could strike with her tail, and her legs had a tremendous force and could hold the victim. No doubt, the T-Rex arsenal is much more diverse. So this point goes to the dinosaur. The pride of audience sympathies, T-Rex is undoubtedly the most famous dinosaur of all time. It's appeared in movies, TV series, cartoons, video games, my worst nightmares, and even postage stamps and memes. And its skeleton in the American Museum of Natural History is the most recognizable in the world. But there are also many myths about it. For example, the idea that it could only see moving objects. In a famous movie, the heroes escape from a T-Rex by just remaining frozen in place. Well, first of all, a dinosaur could easily smell them. Secondly, the T-Rex had excellent vision. It was actually 13 times clearer than humans. Megalodon, on the other hand, had the reputation of a real devil. A scene where Megalodon destroys a fishing boat is still a cult favorite and frightening for viewers worldwide. But because there are so few remains left of it, we can only guess what it really looked like. So, Instagram T-Rex would be much more popular. T-Rex takes this point. The gong sounds, and it means it's time to start the fight. These two predators meet on the coast of North America. Megalodon mostly lived in deep waters, but sometimes they hunted near beaches. T-Rex was also in this area, and now these two predators have come face to face. In shallow water, the Megalodon becomes even slower, and T-Rex easily evades its bite. But it's difficult for her to attack the shark, because Mariana's body does not allow to dive underwater. T-Rex decides to retreat to even shallower water. Megan the Megalodon drops, trying to bite the dinosaur, and just rams her with all of her 50-ton weight. The T-Rex loses her balance and falls down. Now, nothing can help her. Ooh. So, Megalodon proves again that she was the ultimate predator and could easily defeat the world's most famous dinosaur. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the fight of the century. In the left corner is the most famous dinosaur of all time, Tyrannosaurus Rex. Let's call her Mariana. She existed about 70 million years ago and was a true queen in today's North American territory. No one could defeat her in a fair battle. Well, except for that big meteor. Spoiler! In the right corner is the nightmare of the sea, Megalodon. This one's named Megan. This species went extinct about 3 million years ago, but legends about it are still alive. It's the biggest shark that ever existed, and it was a super predator in its time. Both fighters are the highest predators in their category. But what happens when they meet face to face? To find out, let's move on to the first category, size. The largest T-Rex ever found was named Scotty. Hey, beam me up! His hips were about 12 feet tall. But if Scotty straightened his back, he would be about 42 feet tall. It's like putting 3 giraffes on top of each other. And if you wanted to pet this cute guy on the nose, you'd have to stand on the shoulders of 7 people to reach him. Even though our T-Rex is not the biggest of its kind, Mariana still remains one of the most dangerous. But now, let's look at the size of her opponent. The size of the Megalodon is still a controversial thing. The fact is that the only remains of this ancient shark are teeth and vertebrae. So scientists can only guess about the real size of this shark. But even by the most modest calculations, it's bigger than T-Rex. Megalodon was about 50 feet long, which is more than a school bus. It was not only the most massive shark that ever existed, but also the largest fish in the world. Its closest competitor in size was a modern whale shark, but he loses to Megalodon by as much as 10 feet. So, in the size category, Megalodon left no chance for T-Rex. The first point goes to the giant shark Megan. The next class is weight. Let's start with Megan. Usually, adults had a weight of 27 to 59 tons. This is like 3 heavy-lift transport helicopters, or almost like a tank. Actually, some houses have less weight than Megalodon. Its only competitor in the sea is the blue whale. What does T-Rex answer to this? Although it's an incredibly large predator, the largest individual Rexes could only reach a weight of 14 tons. That's relatively small for its size. T-Rex could be terribly slow and clumsy, but some of its bones are hollow. This is what reduces its total weight. Thanks to this, she could be much faster and more agile without losing strength. But we see that Mariana loses to Megan in weight by at least 3 times. So, another point goes to Megalodon. Next up is speed and agility. According to different estimates, Tyrannosaurus Rex could run at speeds of 11 to 45 miles per hour. For comparison, the speed of the fastest human on Earth is only 16 miles per hour. So, you do the math. Yep, we wouldn't have had a chance to escape being lunch for T-Rex. But what about maneuverability? Mariana seems to be big and clumsy. However, T-Rex had excellent balance because of her massive tail and could turn and change direction very quickly. And look at her legs. She clearly doesn't miss a leg day. Now let's look at the second fighter, Megan. Scientists have found that the Megalodon could swim at a speed of about 11 miles per hour. This was enough to become an ultimate predator, but it was inferior to many other species. For example, the fastest sea creature is the sailfish. It can reach 68 miles per hour, about 100 feet per second. Besides, because of its heavy weight, it could not quickly turn or maneuver. Imagine a giant truck needing to make a U-turn. So, when she attacked, she had only one chance to strike. If she missed, she went for a second lap. This gave her prey enough time to run away. In this round, T-Rex finally gets her first score. But we're still 2-1 in favor of Megan the Megalodon. Okay, moving on to the next category, fighting skills. Megalodon was definitely the best predator in the aquatic world, not only because of its size and mass, but also because of its intelligence. Scientists have found traces of Megalodon's teeth on the remains of whales. They concluded that Megan aimed at her prey's weakest spots and knew where the vital organs were located. Other remains of Megalodon's victims had many bone fractures. This suggests that she was not shy about using her weight as a ram. Such a 50-ton ram could easily break through concrete walls. Some individuals prefer to attack the whale's tails and fins first to immobilize them, then attack a defenseless victim. This makes the Megalodon an excellent strategist. Megalodon's prey just didn't have a chance. So, this shark had 2 main techniques: ram and ultimate bite. But the arsenal of T-Rex is much broader. Like a Megalodon, it had the strongest bite of its kind and also used a ram. Although its weight was not as big as Meg's, Mariana could reach a much higher speed, and her impact was much more powerful than that of a shark. On top of that, she could strike with her tail, and her legs had a tremendous force and could hold the victim. No doubt the T-Rex arsenal is much more diverse. So this point goes to the dinosaur. Now it's time for the bonus category, the prize of audience sympathies. T-Rex is undoubtedly the most famous dinosaur of all time. It's appeared in movies, TV series, cartoons, video games, and even postage stamps and memes. And its skeleton in the American Museum of Natural History is the most recognizable in the world. But there are also many myths about it. For example, the idea that it could only see moving objects. In a famous movie, the heroes escape from a T-Rex by just remaining frozen in place. Well, first of all, a dinosaur could easily smell them. Secondly, T-Rex had an excellent vision. It was actually 13 times clearer than humans. Megalodon, on the other hand, has the reputation of a real devil. A scene where Megalodon destroys a fishing boat is still a cult favorite and frightening for viewers worldwide. But because there were so few remains left of it, we can only guess what it really looked like. So, Instagram T-Rex would be much more popular. T-Rex takes this point. Let's move forward. The score is 2-2. So the results of the battle will be decided by the last round. Combat tools. Tyrannosaurus Rex had the most powerful bite force of its kind. It could easily break dinosaur bones much bigger than themselves. But the power of their bite was limited by their teeth. They had a weak layer of enamel and were quite brittle, though they rebuild quite quickly. Her front hands have sharp claws, but this weapon is mostly useless because of the structure of these arms. Megalodon has only one dangerous tool, its teeth. But they can be worth everything that T-Rex has. The teeth of the Megalodon were triangular in shape and were over 7 inches long. These are the most massive teeth that have ever existed, and it had 250 teeth, arranged in 5 rows. Each of them was incredibly sharp and could penetrate through the thick skin of whales. Also, the Megalodon's jaw was 6.5 feet wide. An adult person could easily fit in there, but not for long, because Megalodon had one of the strongest bites on our planet. The gong sounds, and it means it's time to start the fight. These two predators meet on the coast of North America. Megalodons mostly lived in deep waters, but sometimes they hunted near beaches. T-Rex was also in this area, and now these two predators have come face to face. In shallow water, the Megalodon becomes even slower, and T-Rex easily evades its bite. But it's difficult for her to attack the shark, because Tyriana's body size does not allow her to dive underwater. T-Rex decides to retreat to even shallower water. Megan the Megalodon drops, trying to bite the dinosaur and just rams her with all of her 50-ton weight. The T-Rex loses her balance and falls down. Now, nothing can help her. Uh-oh. So, Megalodon proves again that she was the ultimate predator and could easily defeat the world's most famous dinosaur. That's right, come on aboard. Please enter the submarine slowly and make yourself comfortable. Today, we're going deep into the dark parts of the ocean for the ultimate showdown, Shonisaurus and Megalodon. Time to see how Shoni and Meg stack up against each other. First round, age. Look at Shoni, the largest marine reptile, coming out of nowhere. This marine reptile looks a bit tired since it traveled all night and got here all the way from the late Triassic period, about 215 million years ago. Back then, it was all dinosaurs, plus some crocodiles. Oh look, Meg got here on time too. She looks a bit more fresh and relaxed, probably because she's way younger than her contender. She started her dominance over the ocean 20 million years ago. Will she be able to stay on the throne after this duel? Meg went extinct about 2.5 million years ago, or at least we think she did. Only about 5% of the ocean has been explored, so spreading stories about an underwater giant shark is pretty easy. Who knows what's really hiding down there? Even though they're both extinct, dinosaurs like Shoni are way older. Meg's a baby compared to her. Sorry, Meg, 1 point goes to your older challenger. I bet Shoni's got some awesome stories to tell. Next round, length. Ah, good old Meg. She's the largest shark that ever lived on our planet, around 60 feet long. There aren't any full fossils of her to get a really accurate measurement. Scientists that study modern sharks can guess her length by her epic tooth size. Shoni was a little bit shorter, around 50 feet. She kind of looks like a bigger, bonier version of a dolphin. Dolphins can grow up to 13 feet long. Even the biggest dolphin, the orca, looks tiny. It's only 30 feet long. 1 point goes to Meg for being huge. And we're tied up at 1 apiece. Round 3, teeth. Meg was one of the greatest threats in the ocean with teeth similar to those of a modern white shark. Scary, symmetrical, triangular, insanely sharp, and up to 7 inches long. Meg had around 276 teeth in 5 rows. That sounds super scary, but some modern sharks have over 300 teeth. But they're not all ready for action. Some are fully grown, some are still growing up. Sharks' teeth are not that strong, so they fall out a lot, which is not that big a deal like it is for humans. They produce new teeth all the time, so they can replace the ones that get worn down. Get this, Meg probably worked her way through about 40,000 teeth over her lifetime. Shoni, unfortunately, won't be able to defend herself with teeth in this duel, because she doesn't have any. Researchers believe that younger Shonis had teeth because they needed some help getting food and fending off rivals. When they got bigger and older, they didn't need them anymore. Sorry, Shoni, this round isn't even close. Meg takes the lead 2-1. Next round, who can eat more? Scientists believe Meg ate around 2,500 pounds of food every day. Her teeth tell us she didn't exactly love the salad bar. With a mouth almost 10 feet wide, Meg had the most powerful bite of all animals on our planet. That way, she didn't have to be too picky. She could munch on bigger ocean animals like whales, giant turtles, seals, or any other marine mammal that got, too close. No wonder she weighed about 140,000 pounds. Because of her lack of teeth, Shoni preferred animals with softer bodies, like smaller fish, squids, that sort of stuff. We don't really know how much she ate every day, but with an approximate weight of around 60,000 pounds, she's heavier than 2 sperm whales or 3 elephants, but still peanuts compared to the mighty Meg. Good for you, Shoni. Keep up the good work with all that soft food. But unfortunately, Meg's eating up the points in this competition, 3-1. You don't really want to mess with someone who can eat a whole whale for breakfast. Round 5, looks. Scientists have reconstructed Meg to look like a bigger, just a little more dangerous version of a white shark. They were so similar that lots of people thought the white shark was Meg's great-great-great-grandkid. But the truth is that they're not related at all. Meg was the last member of a completely different lineage of sharks. She had a shorter nose and a flatter jaw that almost looked like it got squished somehow. Like the blue shark, she had really long pectoral fins to support her size and weight. Shoni looks like a tubby, bit quirky, and way bigger version of a dolphin. She has 4 flippers and a longer skull. And what's interesting is that she doesn't have a dorsal or sail fin. Shoni can't do any of those cool tricks and maneuvers that dolphins do. That part also probably doesn't help when she meets another hungry dinosaur. She can't dodge out of the way so easily. Still, Shoni's big enough not to have to worry about that kind of stuff. Step aside, Meg. Stop hogging the spotlight. We want to see more of this cute, funny dolphin-like creature. 1 point for Shoni. She's catching up 3-2. Round 6. Who has a cooler name? Shonisaurus means lizard from the Shoshone Mountains. Why? Because it's a lizard from the you get the picture. Cool name, huh? Megalodon, on the other hand, means large tooth. Sorry, Meg, it's 1 point for Griffith. Wait a minute, wrong video. We're all tied up at 3-3. Round 7. Who traveled more? Just like modern sharks, Meg's skeleton isn't made of bone, it's made out of cartilage. That's the stuff your ear and nose are made out of. So no matter how much you look for them, you're never going to find any of Meg's bones. Her only fossils are actually teeth, since they're made of dentin. In her 18 million years of existence, Meg traveled a lot. Her teeth have been found all over the globe. She even went on vacation to tropical and subtropical waters. But the one place she never went was to Antarctica. Shoni was a wanderer too. Her fossils were first found near Las Vegas. No, it's not what you think. She really wasn't all about the parties and shows. Vegas was all underwater back then. She too took long trips along the coast, visited different countries, enjoyed fancy seafood buffets all over the world. Pretty good life overall. Let's give Meg this one for making it to almost every continent. She leads 4-3. Round 8. Who was more popular? Seeing Shoni swim by could easily scare away other sea creatures. She's pretty big after all. But pretty soon, they'd see that this reptile wasn't that dangerous. Okay, squid, small fish, they weren't big fans. But medium-sized water creatures soon figured out they were too big for her, so they could be friends. Except for, the Kraken, a colossal squid and legendary sea monster with extremely powerful tentacles. The story goes that the Kraken had something to do with the disappearance of some members of Shoni's family. So let's just say they're not exactly BFFs. Meg, introvert, loner. She comes to the party and stays in the corner, not talking to anyone. And there weren't exactly a lot of animals lining up to ask her to dance. It'd probably be their last. When you're that high up in the food chain, you're never going to be too popular. Shoni makes a comeback with the popularity round, and it's all tied up at 4. Well, that means both of our contestants are going to share the... Wait, Meg looks furious. You can see her gritting her teeth, getting ready to finish this contest once and for all. Shoni smiles peacefully. She's not used to big animals going after her, so she doesn't think Meg would actually do anything crazy, as long as the submarine doesn't get too close. Okay, wait, Shoni's swimming towards Meg. They're gonna go at it. No, Shoni's telling Meg she can have the prize. Wow, crisis averted. Meg does not like to lose. Shoni, you certainly deserve the Pacifist of the Pacific trophy. Uh-oh, Meg doesn't look too happy about that. Better strap in, guys. Here we go.
Welcome to the ring. In the red corner, Megalodon, an ancient giant shark which ruled over all the watery creatures in the world. Let's call her Meg. She went extinct about 3.5 million years ago, but she's still as scary as ever. Some people think she's still hiding out down there somewhere, just waiting for the perfect time to start roaming the open seas again. In the blue corner, the Mega Piranha. She likes to go by her initials, MP. She's a river fish that went extinct several million years ago and is a distinct relative of the modern piranha. Her crazy eyes and teeth could make any fisherman run for shore, and she has a reputation of being eternally hungry, and she's not a big fan of leaving leftovers. Let's get to it. The first round is all about size. There's still a lot of debate about the size of Megalodon. Sadly, the only remains they've found so far are some giant teeth and a few vertebrae, so we can only guess her real size. But a little calculation suggests that this ancient shark was 50 feet long, about as long as a subway car. And yeah, the blue whale is the largest aquatic creature in the world, at almost twice as long. But Meg's still the largest shark in the world. The whale shark, the next longest, is usually only about 40 feet long. What about MP? Well, there's not a lot to go on. Researchers found part of her jaw and several of her monster teeth in South America. After modeling the body of the piranha, they think she was up to 3 feet long. That's huge for a freshwater fish. MP was queen of the river for sure, but when you stack her up against Meg, it's not even close. Meg's almost 15 times larger. She wins this round 1-0. Let's move on. The next round is weight. So Meg's about the size of a subway car. Impressive, but not as impressive as her weight. She could weigh up to 60 tons. An empty Boeing 737 is only about 40 tons, and that's metal. Even some houses are lighter than that. MP's weight is kind of controversial. but we can make a guess based on her modern relatives. Let's say she weighed about 90 pounds. Pretty tiny, but remember, she didn't hunt alone. When MP sees something she likes, she brings all her friends along. About 100 MPs. That's like 2 SUVs worth of snapping teeth. But still, that's way less than Meg, by a lot. Meg leads 2-0. Next category, agility. Meg's huge muscles helped her reach a speed of 11 miles per hour. This allowed her to feel comfortable in the water and chase down anything interesting. But in the water world, she's not exactly setting any records. Sailfish have a special shape designed for one thing: speed. An incredible 68 miles per hour, 6 times faster than poor Meg. She's like a mountain of muscles, strong, but not exactly fast. Plus, she's so long, it's hard for her to turn around super fast or stop on a dime. Researchers think that MP's speed was pretty much the same as her modern relatives, 15 to 25 miles per hour. And she's got moves. Her whole lifestyle is based on sudden and fast movements. And when she's with all her friends, they move as one, changing direction in a split second. MP's on the board, 2-1 in favor of Meg. Okay, next round, teeth. Like any shark, Meg's the proud owner of some giant teeth. 7-inch long triangles, the biggest teeth that ever existed. And she had 250. They were set out in 5 rows, and each and every one of them was sharp. She could bite through my mom's new leather couch, no problem. All those teeth mean one thing: a seriously massive jaw. You could lie down in there if you want. You could even park your car in there, as long as you never wanted to see it again. Meg's bite was so strong, she could easily bite through metal. But MP's teeth are just as strong as Meg's. Of course, they're a bit smaller, but they're razor sharp. MP's teeth aren't set out all in a row. They're in a zigzag pattern. When she closes her mouth, those teeth slot together to create a wall of sharp razors. MP and her descendants have the strongest bite of all vertebrates relative to their weight. She could grab onto something weighing half a ton. Let's call that one a tie. Meg leads 3-2. Bonus round. Interesting fact time. Meg is a total movie star and is in a bunch of scary stories. Every time a fisherman sees a giant shadow under the water, they lose it. Meg could destroy their boat with one bite. But even though we know how big she was, we still don't really know what she looked like. Perfect for a mysterious sea monster. Most sharks live in saltwater, but there are some freshwater sharks out there. They live in huge rivers like the Amazon, or in smaller lakes and rivers all over Asia. Meg's skin feels like sandpaper, just like most sharks. All those little bumps on her skin point towards her tail, helping her glide through the water. She's got 2 ways of seeing. She can see shapes and colors just like us, but her night vision is a whole lot better. Then, she has special electroreceptors. She can see changes in temperature and even the electromagnetic field of another animal. MP's pretty scary too. She could eat a whole meal in minutes. South American fishermen are scared of regular piranhas. Just imagine if they came face to face with MP. She would have made a great horror movie superstar. When piranhas are taken out of the water, they make really weird sounds, like a dog barking. And when piranhas get close to each other, they sound like ravens. Who's ever heard a raven? Let's give that one to MP, because, well, a barking fish is just awesome. 3-3. Okay, last round. Let's call it eating skills. MP's up first. The basic tactic of all piranhas, including MP, is to surround and trap. They use their incredible speed and agility to surprise even the most agile fish. Anyway, they search for food in packs, so if you dodge one, there are still 99 others just waiting. MP doesn't only like small fish. She and her buddies could finish a whole seafood buffet. Meg may be the greatest of all time, but not because of her muscles or huge teeth. She uses her brain to find food. She doesn't just run into any random restaurant. She plans out her route. She knows where she's gonna park. She knows where she's gonna sit. And she knows just how to get a meal exactly how she likes it. Meg likes to give her food a whack right on any weak spot she can find. Tail, head, or tummy. Every meal needs a different strategy. Sometimes, Meg even likes to tackle her lunch by ramming into it. 1 point to Meg for using her head. She leads 4-3. There's the gong. Final showdown time. Last chance for MP. Sharks don't normally live in freshwater like piranhas, but Meg's so powerful, she can take anything. MP and her buddies are lurking at the bottom, waiting for something delicious to swim by. But Meg has excellent eyesight and sees them hiding down there. She dives down, but MP's too fast, too skillful. Her whole group dodges out of the way of Meg's huge jaw. Meg turns around to try again, but it's a trap. MP leads the others in a straight-on charge. They surround Meg. She's got nowhere to go. But Meg's skin is too thick for MP's teeth. MP changes her tactics. She tells her friends to go for Meg's tail and fins. There's some thinner skin there. Meg's in trouble. Time to get back to the safety of saltwater. MP chases her, no problem, but Meg's just too big for her. She makes it back to sea, where MP and her team can't follow. MP takes the final round. It's a tie, 4-4. The Megalodon shark roamed the oceans, scaring and chewing everything to pieces long after the dinosaurs were wiped out by the great meteorite. We know that it was the largest and most dangerous hunter that ever lived, as well as the biggest shark. It was the king of all seas, swimming freely between most parts of the ocean. But then, about 2.5 million years ago, the last of its kind disappeared from Earth forever, leaving only huge teeth to be found by modern archaeologists. And it could be because of the great white sharks. The Megalodon is usually described as a sort of gigantic version of this marine animal. This is a common misconception people make because these creatures were thought to be related. In fact, the Meg looked more like a modern bull shark. It had a short snout, a flat lower jaw, and long and massive pectoral fins that supported its weight. And what's more important, the ancestors of today's great whites existed at the same time as the Megalodon. But with great size comes great clumsiness. Although the Meg was huge and powerful, it was also not as nimble as the smaller and quicker great white sharks. Researchers believe that great whites actually rivaled with the Megalodon for food and were often more successful hunters thanks to their agility. They couldn't fight the Meg openly, but were fast enough to steal its food. So, the only food left for the Megalodon were whales and equally big marine animals. Adult Megs could easily catch such beasts, but their offspring were much smaller and more vulnerable than their parents. Scientists believe other sharks could have used this to their advantage. While the Megalodon was still little, it often became a meal for great whites, bull, and tiger sharks. Even then, a great white shark could be almost 20 feet long, while a Megalodon pup was typically twice as small. A pretty easy meal for a great white. But even if there had been no open confrontation between young Megalodons and smaller adult sharks, Meg pups wouldn't have been able to find food for themselves to grow to adulthood. The population of other sharks was growing, and they were rivaling with each other and the Megs for food. The more great whites and other sharks there were, the less food remained for the young monster sharks. Eventually, they would have simply starved. As if this wasn't enough for the Megalodon to cease to exist, their favorite big munch, the whales, began to adapt to changing conditions on Earth. The Meg was a warmth-loving shark, and it was abundant in tropical and subtropical waters. When they first evolved, about 20 million years ago, the climate on the planet was much milder. Both land and seas were generally warmer, and so the Meg could swim and eat wherever it pleased. As years went by, the climate went on changing though. It became extremely cold closer to the poles, and lots of marine animals and fish had to adapt to this temperature shift. But the Megalodon didn't cope as well. It still loved warm waters, so it stayed where it felt comfortable, even if that area was shrinking.
What it didn't realize was that whales were among those who became okay with the cold. The big marine mammals went further north, and Meg was left without a supper.
It was the largest fish our Earth had ever seen, and its bite was strong enough to crush a car. The largest of its teeth found was the length of a remote control. It consumed about 2,500 pounds of food a day. That's like 3,300 cans of tuna for you. The earliest Megalodon fossils are from about 20 million years ago, but you won't see its skeleton, and that's because the mighty Meg had no bones. A skeleton made from bones gives most animals their body shape and strength. Sharks, though, come from the same subclass as rays, skates, and sawfish and have cartilage instead of bones. Cartilage is a tissue that is softer and more flexible than bones, but it's still tough enough to shape the body and protect the internal organs. Some areas are more flexible, since cartilage is weaker, and some, like the shark's head, are much tougher thanks to calcified cartilage. Their snouts, though, are made of really soft and flexible cartilage to work like a bumper in case of a collision with some dangers. Who knows if they'd be able to do all this with a heavy skeleton? Plus, cartilage makes their jaws more flexible, and they can open their mouths much wider than they would with a jaw made of bone. Our hero, Meg, was no exception, and it had the strongest bite of all living creatures, which was also made possible by a skeleton made of cartilage. Sharks take full advantage of their cartilage. It helps them swim and turn fast while hunting. One drawback of this type of skeleton is that it was really tricky for scientists to establish the shape and size of Meg. Normally, they would do it using fossilized bone skeletons or their parts. With Meg, they had to guess based on the teeth they found and comparisons with living relatives. A more recent 3D computer model was based partially on scans of a preserved spine discovered in the 1860s. The model showed that Meg was bigger, faster, and even hungrier than scientists had previously thought. Looks like an average Megalodon was 52 feet long. That's slightly bigger than the height of the Hollywood sign and weighed 10 times as heavy as an elephant. There were also much bigger creatures. Scientists still aren't sure how the Megalodon got this size. The fact that there were bigger and smaller Megs probably has to do with a little something called Bergmann's rule. It says that the temperature of the surrounding environment affects the animal's body size because they either need to conserve or shed heat. The Megalodons that reached cooler waters probably needed more body weight to make sure they survived in low temperatures. Those living in warmer waters had to be smaller to avoid burning up. If the researchers were correct in their calculations, it also means that Meg reached a cruising speed of over 3 miles per hour, which is much faster than other sharks. The still-living great white shark can cover a distance of nearly 7,000 miles without stopping, which is 9/10 as long as the diameter of Earth. It looks like the Megalodon could have gone much further. Megalodons managed to survive on our planet for nearly 70 times longer than humans have. They were roaming the oceans for around 20 million years, and you could see them pretty much anywhere except near the poles. Scientists discovered the most northern fossils off the coast of Denmark and the most southern in New Zealand. The reason why there were no Megalodon teeth found in Antarctica is most likely that these adapted to only warm tropical and subtropical waters. The younger ones like to keep to the shores, while full-grown adults preferred coastal areas, but they could easily move into the open ocean as well. When our planet went through a period of global cooling and drying, and the seas began to freeze around 3.6 million years ago, there was less and less room for Meg to thrive. Much of their prey, like smaller whales, seals, and sea turtles, disappeared or relocated to waters that were too cold for our hero. And at the same time, the number of its natural competitors, like smaller predatory sharks, like the great white shark, and whales, increased. This shifting food chain dynamics could have been even more dangerous for the Meg than the cold ocean water. You're used to seeing them on the big screen as heartless monsters, but these huge sharks were actually loving and caring family guys. Scientists discovered several Megalodon nursery areas in Florida, Maryland, Panama, and off the coast of Spain. It looks like they gave birth to their young in shallow water environments. Then, little megs would stay there with adults protecting and raising them until they were ready to fight off predators. The mighty meg had 276 teeth in 5 rows in its mouth. Similar to other sharks, it was fast in replacing its worn-out or lost teeth. With 4 or 5 rows of teeth in its mouth, it basically acted like a conveyor belt, able to grow back damaged or missing teeth. This means that an adult megalodon probably would have grown several thousand teeth throughout its lifetime. Although the great white shark is often mentioned as Meg's closest relative, they'd hardly be distant cousins. The ancestors of today's great white existed at the same time as the Meg, but they weren't best friends and even rivaled each other. The great white shark wouldn't win in a head-to-head fight with a Meg, but it was a better hunter using its smaller size and agility to snap up the giant's prey quickly. This only left the bigger fish and whales for the Meg, but its food supplies began to run out as the whales swam to the cooler new seas. Rather than a great white, the Megalodon is more like a modern bull shark. It had a short snout, a flat lower jaw, and huge pectoral fins to support its massive weight and size. We also speak of Meg as an extinct giant, but can we be 100% sure it isn't hiding somewhere as we speak? After all, we've only explored 5% of our oceans altogether. The Mariana Trench is the deepest oceanic trench on Earth, and you could dip the whole of Mount Everest in its deepest part, and over a mile of it would still be above the surface. If a megalodon or two needed a place to hide, that would be the perfect spot. It wouldn't be the coziest place to live, though, with its cold water and total darkness. Plus, the pressure there is 1,000 times stronger than at sea level. So, if a Meg really were hiding down there, it would have serious issues with its teeth, because calcium would dissolve under that pressure. To survive here, it would also need to learn to navigate in complete darkness. That means it would have either become bioluminescent or evolve to grow massive eyes like the giant squid. If the Meg were still around and true to its dietary choices, it would have to eat smaller fish, and that would be a problem for us humans. Especially those of us who love fish, that is. And the ocean isn't cooling down these days. The Megalodon would love its temperature and would thrive and reproduce faster than ever. Those giants would create some massive problems for cargo ships and cruising vessels. In case you're now scared at the thought of meeting a Megalodon, relax. Most scientists don't think it's possible because of our hero's size. Most foods that megalodons like to eat live in shallow ocean areas and not in the deep, deep sea. Meg would need to come up for dinner every now and then, and it's kinda hard to miss a creature this big. They're both giant prehistoric creatures to us, but the megalodons and the dinosaurs never actually coexisted. The dinosaurs probably died out about 66 million years ago. Megalodons seem to have appeared a bit later.
Now, we as human beings have faced all sorts of challenges: ice ages, tough diseases, squabbles over real estate, and so on. But let's try to go way, way back to 400 million years ago, to the times when our oceans were ruled by sea creatures and the lands barely had any animals on them. Do you think you'd be able to survive there? We're talking about the Devonian period. It started around 400 million years ago and lasted really long, about 60 million years. It's named after Devon, England, where scientists first studied rocks from this time. The world was quite different then. Our planet featured 3 continents: a gigantic supercontinent, Gondwana, down south, a smaller one called Siberia up north, and another medium-sized one called Laurasia to the east. These landmasses were moving around and crashing into each other, making big mountains. Now, imagine if your time machine broke down and you ended up in this ancient world. You're now in a world where the land is pretty much a barren wasteland. You are surrounded by basic plants like mosses and ferns. This is the early Devonian period. There were no trees yet, but moss was everywhere. And wow, that's a lot of water! Around 85% of the Earth was covered by oceans during the Devonian, so you see many warm, shallow, oxygen-depleted lakes around you. The first thing you notice is that breathing seems a little harder. Well, don't panic. It's all because of lower oxygen levels, around 19%. It's still enough to ignite fire, and trust me, you'll need one, but prepare to feel a bit dizzy. Luckily, there are no huge predators to run away from, but you'll probably have to do a lot of swimming. Alright, at least the weather seems pretty nice, warm and steady. If you keep traveling, you'll notice that the land seems almost limitless. That's because we're on Gondwana, the biggest supercontinent of them all. Since the tectonic plates don't move around much, there are barely any mountains around, and the Earth actually feels flat. Well, not totally flat. Gondwana boasted a gigantic mountain range, akin to the Himalayas. This range was gradually breaking down, sending sediments into the ocean. Those sediments would provide nutrients that help marine life thrive. In any case, it really feels like a whole different planet. The landscape around you looks like something out of Mars, if it had water. The only question is, where is all the life? Underwater, of course. There's a reason why Devonian is called the Age of Fishes. Now, to be fair, it wasn't all fish. The conditions were perfect for certain early marine life to develop important things, like lungs. Some even gained the ability to crawl out of the water and onto land for short periods. So, if you spot a tiny lizard-like creature around the coast, don't step on it. It's your great-great-great-great-great-grandparent. Well, it's not like you'd be able to really step on it. Remember the guy from the Evolution meme with a funny crocodile-like head? His name is Tiktaalik. As you can guess, it was one of the first creatures linking fish to land. And although it might look friendly, it actually has a 9-foot-long body and very sharp teeth. And yes, it can crawl. So if you notice a huge lizard, better find a hiding spot. You'll start seeing more of those Tiktaaliks and four-legged animals in general by the Middle Devonian. But let's risk our lives for a moment and dive underwater. What do we have here? Welcome to Subnautica, Earth Virgin. While the land looks very primitive, marine life is incredibly diverse. We have corals, sponge-like creatures, sea lilies, shellfish that resemble clams, and more. The oceans are filled with various critters that look fascinating and potentially dangerous. Here are some tough armored placoderms, and yes, all of them are bigger than you. These formidable fish had powerful jaws with blade-like plates as teeth. They started as tiny guys who munched on mollusks, but as time went on, some turned into massive fish-slicing monsters, reaching up to 33 feet in length. The biggest of them was Heterosteus with their scary-looking eyes. This other guy, whose name Titanichthys, with its mouth always ready to swallow you. And the largest one, Dunkleosteus. Oh, those are $5 names, huh? And here are some smaller guys. These are the shark ancestors, the cartilaginous fish. They had small, rough scales, fixed fins, and sharp, replaceable teeth. And finally, there are tiny ancestors of our normal modern sea creatures, bony fish. They're nice and pretty harmless. They were covered in scales and equipped with maneuverable fins. You know what? I think you can cook this one. So the question is, how do you cook it? There are no trees for fuel around, not until the Middle Devonian at least. So you'd have to scrounge up some super dry moss and get to work rubbing rocks together. Fortunately, the warmth of the climate would save you from freezing at night. But since there's not much stuff to burn, you might be better off sticking to a raw diet of mollusks and other early arthropods. In this world of basic plant life on land and a huge ocean around, getting food and resources would be quite tough for you. Perhaps you could stick to fishing or collecting stuff from the sea. Overall, you'd have to be really clever to live off the small amount of plant life and maybe learn a thing or two from the sea creatures about navigating the oceans. In any case, you'd have to start from scratch. Surviving in the Devonian would be quite a challenge. Our bodies aren't built for living underwater or thriving in an environment dominated by early marine life. You need some shelter. Maybe you could try to build a basic house along the shores using dirt and moss, probably. You just need to create tools and shelters using whatever resources you can find. So, get creative. Also, get used to living without clothes, unless you make up a way to create a dress out of moss, seashells, and fish bones, all Little Mermaid style. Alright, to make it more fair for you, let's say you ended up closer to the late Devonian period. Hey, now things are looking up. At the end of that era, the first forest started covering our Earth. Now we had plants with spores, leaves and roots, and even the first plants with seeds. The land is slowly getting some life. Hooray to normal breathing again! We've got some little bugs, 4- and 6-legged critters. The first land vertebrates, early tetrapods, started showing up. They're pretty cool. Very early ancestors of mammals and eventually us humans. But hold on, Houston, we've got a problem. As plants started taking over the land and breaking the rocks with roots, they released tons of nutrients in the water and caused a chain reaction. The sea got filled with algae, greedy bacteria thrived, and since there was almost no oxygen in the waters, around 70 to 80% of the species vanished. Whoops. But hey, good news for you! Less oxygen-hungry predators in the water. However, now you have to watch out for your new land neighbors. Most of them aren't harmful, but it's better to watch out. But still, with more trees and plants around, you could make useful tools like spears, fishing hooks, and rope. During the end of the Devonian, you might even build yourself a tree house. Picture that, in a world with the first tree ever, reaching 90 feet tall with a super wide trunk. So, it seems like you'd be able to survive without much trouble. You might even turn into a vegetarian with all these plant options. And hey, no more itchy clothes. You could fashion something much more comfortable. And remember that dinosaurs are on their way. Until then, enjoy your time.
The stonefish. Stonefish aren't going to win any beauty contests, unless the pageant is for best rock lookalike. Their tiny unreflective eyes and rough skin blend in perfectly with their environment. A large head, an even bigger mouth, and a home full of, yeah, it's rocks. And just because you're on the beach doesn't mean you're safe. Stonefish can survive for 24 hours out of the water. Stepping on one or even handling one won't be that fun. Their dorsal fin spines have extremely strong venom. It shoots out when they get stepped on, and it can lead to paralysis or even heart failure. You'll need help fast. No wonder they're one of the most dangerous creatures in the water, or anywhere. Be careful when scrambling around rocky areas. They love to play hide and seek. The deep sea dragonfish. If there were a prize for the most hideous fish in the ocean, the deep sea dragonfish would win. With slimy, scaleless skin, massive teeth, and a face only a mother could love, this bad boy of the sea is nothing to mess with. It likes to swim between 700 feet and 6,000 feet below the surface of the ocean, where the waters are the darkest and coldest. Along with some other creatures on this list, the deep sea dragonfish relies on its bioluminescent body parts to catch prey. It also uses its hanging appendage, which boasts a little red light on the end, coming out from its lower jaw. Many fish mistake this little light for prey, luring them right into the jaws of the deep sea dragonfish. Very clever dragonfish, very clever indeed. The fangtooth. The Mariana Trench is an underwater trench with a depth of 35,000 feet, nearly 7 miles below the ocean surface. Let that sink in. While scientists know the Mariana Trench exists, it's one of the least explored places on Earth. It's also the deepest area of Earth's oceans. And although many creatures down there probably haven't even been seen by humans yet, scientists have had the creepy pleasure of getting to know the fangtooth. The fangtooth fish shamelessly lives up to its name. Just look at that thing. The fangtooth is carnivorous and feeds on just about anything it can find that gets caught in its sharp-toothed mouth. These fish rely on their contact chemoreception to find prey. In other words, they can sense chemical residue that comes off of other living organisms in the deep sea. This is because they don't have any light-producing cells on their bodies, unlike many other deep-sea fish. On top of all that, it's pretty dark down there. So whatever crosses their path, they chomp on. While these guys look pretty scary, they're not a threat to humans. They only grow about 7 inches long. Even so, I wouldn't want to run into one of these things during a relaxing swim in the ocean. The Dunkleosteus. Strangely enough, this prehistoric fish, known as the T-Rex of the seas, had no teeth. Those were replaced with bony plates that allowed it to have the strongest bite among other monsters of its size. The goblin shark. If you thought the movies about sharks were scary, this next deep-sea creature will make you swear off going for dips in the ocean forever. However, it lives 3,000 feet underwater, so you'll never likely see it face to face. The goblin shark looks like a cross between a shark and a creature from your worst nightmare. These sharks boast a protruding sword-like snout with a jaw that juts out to match. Unlike other sharks that have more of a gray hue, this creepy thing looks not so pretty and pink. Aside from their scary demeanor, what do scientists really know about the goblin shark? Well, not much, except that they can grow up to 18 feet in length. Looks like there's still a lot to learn about these guys, if you dare to. By the way, did you know that sharks don't sleep? Many species have to keep water moving over their gills to get oxygen, so they can't fall into a deep sleep like we do. That's why they stay half awake during rest. Typically, sharks don't even close their eyes. The cookie cutter shark. This shark is a living horror, with lower teeth being big and sharp, while the upper ones are much smaller. When its teeth fall off, the shark eats them to maintain calcium levels. Pretty smart solution for a shark. The frilled shark. Studying the frilled shark is like looking through a portal back to prehistoric times. That's because scientists think that these eel-like sharks haven't changed much since their oldest ancestors roamed the deep sea waters, so they're sometimes referred to as living fossils. These sharks' mouths are filled with a terrifying 25 rows of backward-facing sharp teeth, 300 in total. They're designed to grasp prey and hold them tight so they can't get away, according to early studies of the shark conducted in 1884 and published in the Bulletin of the Essex Institute. Luckily for swimmers, the frilled sharks live between 390 feet and 4,200 feet below the ocean's surface, so they'll probably never run into them. Probably. This is probably the worst nightmare of any dentist. The northern stargazer. Take a look at this cutie. The northern stargazer is definitely not something you'd wish to see on the ocean floor. This horrid creature hides its body under the sand, leaving its face above to wait for prey. The tasseled wobbegong. Here's another carpet shark on our list. It lies low on the bottom of the sea and patiently waits for its prey to come by. The Australian ghost shark. The Australian ghost shark isn't really even a shark, but a very bony fish. It's also a living fossil. It hasn't changed within the last 400 million years. Believe it or not, sharks and humans have a common ancestor that lived around 440 million years ago. Even though we both evolved in our own way, there are still some signs of that connection. For example, the genome of an elephant shark is very similar to humans. The Leopleurodon. This list of terrifying creatures would be incomplete without mentioning the terrifying and prehistoric Leopleurodon. This carnivorous marine reptile existed during the Colovian stage of the Middle Jurassic Era and ruled the waters at 9 feet in length. Scientists believe Leopleurodon thrived in this deep-sea trench because of its ability to swim long distances and its 4 paddle-like limbs. While they probably weren't able to propel themselves toward prey like other animals of the area, they did manage to accelerate and attack very ruthlessly and efficiently. Additionally, they relied on their long snouts to smell prey, which leads scientists to believe they didn't rely on sight for hunting. This means they could have thrived in the dark Mariana Trench. Around 150 million years ago, Leopleurodon became extinct due to competition for prey against other thriving marine reptiles. And I think I speak for all of us when I say, thank goodness for that. Considering that scientists have only explored 5% of the ocean floor and found some of the scariest sea creatures imaginable, one can only dream of what other animals reside in the deep sea waters. Perhaps it's best to keep them in your imagination. Am I right? The megamouth shark. This shark is a filter feeder, and it's friendly to humans, although its huge mouth can look quite threatening. Like basking sharks, it swims with its mouth constantly wide open, as if it were on Twitter. The gulper eel. This deep-sea eel has an easily distended belly that allows it to swallow prey twice its size in a single monstrous bite. They have very unusual jaw shapes and can reach about 2 to 3 feet in length. Do you see that large log near the ocean floor? Maybe it's part of an old ship. Treasure, gold, diamonds, I'm rich! Well, as you get closer, you notice something. It's swimming! It's not a shark or a dolphin, it's a saltwater crocodile! Now don't panic. If you bump into one of these reptiles in the sea, it's unlikely it'll think of you as food. Crocodiles have a special valve in their throat that stops them from drowning underwater, but that doesn't mean they can't bite. Usually, they're heading to a nearby island, and the quickest way there is to body surf. They can't really take the ferry, you know. Watching one from a distance should be okay. Just don't swim to shore right away. They love to ambush their lunch in shallow water. If there's one time I'd want to see a great white shark, it's when I'm diving with crocodiles. They'll gladly take a crocodile-sized nibble, given the right motivation. What's the scariest predator under the ocean? The crocodile? Huh, I don't think so. Loch Ness Monster? Please, it never existed. How about the Cenozoic? Well, it is extinct, but you might be onto something. Let's take a look at what it'd be like if these creatures were still around today. First things first, what on earth was it? The Cenozoic was a marine carnivore that lived in the cool, high-latitude Eromanga Sea. It covered vast areas of inland Australia between 90 and 120 million years ago, during the early Cretaceous period. Near-complete fossils of the creature were also found near Colombia, which is a country that has a noted connection to prehistoric reptiles and turtles. This fact makes it extremely possible that the monster I'm about to describe existed worldwide. You might have heard saurus and thought, oh, it's a dinosaur. But these were actually reptiles. They were the largest member of the Plesiosauridae family, referred to as plesiosaurs. Fossil evidence suggests they weighed over 20,000 pounds and were roughly 30 feet in length. Just to put that in perspective, the longest crocodile ever measured was a saltwater crocodile by the name of Lolong from the Philippines. It was 20 feet in length and weighed just under 2,500 pounds. And that's still 10 feet shorter and incredibly lighter than the average Cenozoic, making the crocodile seem like nothing more than a glorified goldfish in comparison. Despite its terrifying length, the most physically daunting feature of the Cenozoic was its head. Its skull was about 8 feet long, which was actually proportionally large given the size of its body length. Anything that was unfortunate enough to end up inside the Cenozoic's mouth may have been given false hope. After all, the teeth of the beast weren't actually that sharp. On second thought, I take that back. I wouldn't feel confident around a toothless snake, let alone being inside the mouth of this monster. But it's true that the Cenozoic's teeth weren't sharp, especially when compared to other carnivorous reptiles, such as crocodiles and alligators. The teeth of this prehistoric sea creature were instead conical. This means that they were cone-like in shape. Unfortunately, this lack of sharpness didn't make them less dangerous. The teeth were enormous and could be up to 12 inches long from the crown tips to the bottom of the roots. This obviously meant that the Cenozoic had an extremely powerful bite. It was estimated to be up to 30,000 newtons, which is almost twice as powerful as the bite of a large saltwater crocodile. Because of the bluntness of their teeth, they weren't suited for twisting their prey once in their grasp, but the size and shape of the teeth made them perfect for simple open and shut biting. They would have had no problem crushing hard objects such as the toughest of shells any sea turtle could offer. Just like crocodiles, the Kronosaurus is believed to have had a short neck. This may have been an adaptation to allow the beast to successfully catch small, evasive animals. Their body, in general, was fusiform and streamlined. This means it was narrowed at both ends and had very little resistance to the flow of water. The Kronosaurus was also equipped with 4 paddle-like limbs. The hind limbs were larger than the front ones. They could span approximately 7 feet in diameter. All in all, this set the Kronosaurus up to effortlessly propel itself through the waters and be an ultimate predator. Predator X, if you will? That's the name that was given to the fossil of a creature discovered near Svalbard, a Norwegian island group, in 2009. The fossil was identified as a 50-foot-long, 100,000-pound monster with a bite force of 33,000 pounds per square inch. This might be the highest bite force of any known animal. Although Predator X is yet to be classified as any specific type of animal, it was definitely a plesiosaur like the Kronosaurus. And even if it wasn't Predator X, the Kronosaurus was still most definitely a ferocious titan when it roamed Earth's oceans. The Kronosaurus actually got its name from the Greek mythological figure of Cronus, the father of Zeus. Cronus was viewed as a titan from a generation of super powerful beings. So what was it that the Kronosaurus, this terrifying monster, actually feasted on to satisfy its appetite? This creature was known to eat sea turtles, squid, and other larger marine reptiles of that time, such as elasmosaurids and ichthyosaurs. This suggests that if crocodiles existed in the realms of the Kronosaurus, they too might have turned into lunch for the beast. There's evidence from the fossil remains of the Kronosaurus that suggests that they also feasted on sharks, which I know is a disappointment to those of you who view that beast as the king of the ocean. Not when the Kronosaurus was around, my friend. In any case, grounding all kinds of food into small pieces to help digest them would have been difficult without small teeth. This explains the presence of rounded stones found in many of the remains of these sea creatures. Researchers believe these stones may have been swallowed to control buoyancy or to help process food. It's also entirely possible they were accidentally swallowed while feeding on other animals from the seafloor. As if the Kronosaurus even needed to be a meanie with its already existing power and size, there's also evidence to suggest that it indeed might have been. It turns out that after using all its impressive attributes to catch its dinner, the Kronosaurus first liked to play with its food, like a cat does with a mouse. I guess since the hunt was so easy for them, they needed to get their fun from somewhere else. Well, I think now you should have a good idea about these creatures. So let's ask ourselves what it would be like if they were still around today. And by the way, why aren't they? Well, the Kronosaurus was completely finished off by the same KT meteor that took out the dinosaurs 66 million years ago. But even before this catastrophic event, they were coming under increased pressure from an even bigger and more vicious family of carnivorous marine reptiles known as mosasaurs. You can't always be a top dog, I guess, or rather, top marine reptile. But what if this never happened, and they were still roaming Earth? Well, this might be obvious, but can you imagine what kind of impact that would have on sea tourism? Based on the impact that famous movies about sharks and killer whales had, what do you think the presence of a Kronosaurus in the ocean would do to beaches? The very creature that would eat sharks and whales for breakfast. Beaches would certainly become a great place to go for a quiet walk, because nobody else would even be there. And what about such activities as boating, surfing, and scuba diving? You think anyone would dare try them, knowing that this 30-foot beast could be lurking beneath them? Let's give humans some credit and assume most of them wouldn't. This would cripple the global sea tourism industry, which is responsible for earning roughly $143 billion every year. Just to make sure this shocking point hits home, the most expensive yacht to ever roam the ocean was called the History Supreme. Its master bedroom was believed to have a statue made of T-Rex's bone and a wall made of meteorite rocks, as well as a 24-karat gold panoramic wall aquarium. Anyway, this yacht was worth nearly $5 billion, meaning you could buy 38 of them with the money lost in potential damages to sea tourism caused by the Cenozoic. I'm sure that the yacht's owner was happy the beast never made an appearance in their luxurious aquarium. So luxurious, in fact, that some people believe the History Supreme, reportedly owned by some business genius from Malaysia, never even existed. Rumor has it that it was simply an elaborate hoax fabricated by the supposed designer. Anyway, I don't think the trouble would just stop there. People could actually be in serious danger, regardless of being near the ocean or not. No, I'm not about to tell you that this thing would grow legs, adapt to living on land, and start picking us off one by one. At least, I hope not. I'm just going to point out the damage that the Cenozoic would inflict through its devastating impact on sea trade. In America, ocean transit accounts for 76% of national trade. On top of this, more than 100 vital pharmaceutical products originate in the sea. I'll also state the obvious and point out that the ocean is a huge food source for us humans. The presence of the Cenozoic could have a great impact on our relationship with the ocean, something we usually take for granted.
So imagine stumbling upon a creature so huge it could dwarf even the largest known marine animals today. Scientists discovered the fossils of this beast on England's coast and believe it once ruled the waves. The new species was named Ichthyotitan severnensis, but thankfully for me, scientists nicknamed it the Little Stock Monster. Its estimated lengths range from 72 to 85 feet long, almost as big as a blue whale. Megalodon can't even compare to this. It was only about 60 feet long. And what's crazy is that this fossil we found wasn't even an adult, so who knows what their actual size was. The first piece of the Little Stock Monster was discovered in 2016 in the Westbury Formation. Researchers found a 3-foot-long jaw part that belonged to an unknown species. For years, this single fragment had been driving them crazy because they had no idea what that animal was. Then, in 2020, a miracle happened, of sorts. A father with his 11-year-old daughter found the second piece of fossil on a beach. This discovery led to more findings. Finally, in 2022, the last piece of the literal jaw puzzle was found, buried along the Somerset coast. This Leviathan belonged to the Shastasaurid family. Both the Little Stock Monster and other Shastasaurids had one ancestor, so all the species in this family are super similar to each other. For example, all of them were the largest marine reptiles ever to exist. Although our Little Stock Monster is much larger, most Shastasaurids could grow up to only 69 feet long, and it's possible that the Little Stock Monster, when fully grown, would reach up to 100 feet or even more. Both of their bodies were just perfect for cruising the ancient seas. These marine titans were elegant and slender, with an elongated snout. Other marine animals at the time were smaller and looked more like dolphins. Shastasaurids had long paddle-like limbs adapted for efficient swimming. Their skulls show large eye sockets, which means they had excellent vision. If you were in the ocean, no matter what time it was or where you were hiding, they could spot you. They were also incredibly fast and could dive to great depths. Of course, all these things made them the most terrifying predators. They ate pretty much everything, including fish and squid, and you if you were there. They probably captured their prey like whales, opened their huge mouths, and literally sucked the fish in. What made the Little Stock Monster especially scary is that it wins in the jaw competition. For other Shastasaurids, their jaws were a bit weaker, so they hunted smaller fish, kind of like today's orcas. They required vast amounts of food. This shows us that the Earth's Triassic oceans had rich, productive food webs. But the Little Stock Monster has this unique feature. It could open its jaw almost 90 degrees upwards. It also had tons of powerful muscles around. Its jaws were horrifyingly strong. So while others were hunting some squids, the Little Stock Monster probably hunted large fish and even other marine reptiles. Fossils of Shastasaurids have been found everywhere in the world, from North America to Asia. This means that these creatures dominated and terrorized the oceans for millions of years, although even they weren't completely safe from scavengers. And that's exactly why we struggle to find these fossils now. Scavengers didn't leave any remnants of them. So, while we have some fossils of this marine family, they mostly remain a mystery for us. They lived in the oceans about 200 million years ago, in the late Triassic period. The Earth looked completely different back then. All continents were united in one Pangaea, a huge landmass. Some parts of this supercontinent were covered with lush conifer forests, while others were dry deserts and open prairies. It was before the famous Jurassic period, but there were already first pterosaurs and amphibians. It seems like those monsters were crazy resilient. The Triassic period was super unstable, but they survived through many changes in the environment. Well, until the last one. The Triassic extinction came out of nowhere. It was one of the Earth's big 5 extinction events. It wiped out almost all species on the planet, including these Leviathans. It's still not clear what happened exactly, but it looks like there was a huge tectonic activity. Volcanoes in the oceans were going crazy back then. These massive volcanic eruptions have probably altered the climate and ocean chemistry, leading to the extinction of many species. Scientists have a theory that it might have happened because there was a rain of comets flying to our planet from the Oort cloud. This likely happens about every 200 million years or so. I wasn't around then, so I'm just guessing here. In any case, after the extinction, the Earth took some time to recover. Then it entered the famous Jurassic period. More terrifying sea monsters were on the way. One of them left us a colossal skull. This fossil is 150 million years old, and it also belonged to a sea beast from Jurassic times. They called it the Sea Rex. The name is very fitting. This monster could have broken a car in half with one bite. It was also discovered accidentally. A fossil enthusiast was walking along the Jurassic coast. This place is famous for having tons of ancient fossils, all because of the erosion and stormy weather. Typically, people find small spiral fossils here. However, this time, he discovered a giant sea monster fossil. Excited, he contacted scientists. They arrived at the spot right away and then had to carefully climb down a cliff to search for the rest of the skull. This fragment alone is 6.5 feet long. Turns out it's a newly discovered species of pliosaurs, giant predators of the ancient seas. Pliosaurs were among the largest marine predators ever. Some of them grew up to 40 feet long. They used their huge teeth to snatch and devour prey, including other reptiles. Well, at least those creatures are far gone. But what about the horrors that still live in our oceans? Recently, biologists discovered the world's longest animal, the one that's still alive to this day. They found it off Australia's coast, on the Gascoyne coast, a very mysterious and unexplored place. There, underwater vehicles stumbled upon a frightening 150-foot-long siphonophore. That's twice as long as many blue whales and 3 times as long as a humpback whale. Doesn't it kind of look like one of those toy string worms? But this creature isn't friendly at all. It's a string-like deep-sea predator. What's even more scary is that this isn't actually one creature. It's a colony of small clones working together as one. Basically, collective consciousness. Ooh, Borg. Together, they stretch out like a single long string in the water. This creature might be the longest siphonophore ever found, and it was discovered at a depth of around 2,000 feet. Siphonophores, similar to jellyfish, capture their prey by dangling stinging tentacles in the water. When their tentacles touch small crustaceans and fish, they get paralyzed, and then they're reeled up to the colony's body. Expeditions to Western Australia's underwater canyons were definitely worth it. Together with that siphonophore, scientists have discovered up to 30 potential new marine species. Among them were a new octopus or squid, a long-tailed sea cucumber, glass sponges, and giant hyroids, colonies of animals resembling upside-down jellyfish. None of them have been seen before in Australia. But most of them weren't as scary as the one that was recently discovered in the Gulf of Mexico. This creature is straight out of a sci-fi thriller, a 26-foot-long mangapinna squid or bigfin squid. It was discovered near an offshore oil rig at a depth of more than 7,800 feet. It has incredibly long elastic tentacles, which can be 15 to 20 times longer than its body. It holds them at right angles to its body, making it look even creepier, almost as if it has elbows. And yes, it's another deep-sea predator. These 10 tentacles probably help the squid trap their prey and drag it onto the seafloor. We barely know anything about this extraterrestrial-looking creature because they're very hard to find and study. And if you think their tentacles are awful, just check out these creatures with 20 arms. This thing looks like a facehugger. This new species is lurking in the frozen depths of Antarctica. Experts were searching for cryptic sea animals known as Promachocrinis, or Antarctic feather stars. They're kind of similar to starfish and sea cucumbers, but have an otherworldly appearance and can live up to 6,500 feet below the surface. It's called the Antarctic strawberry feather star. Despite its pretty name, its appearance is anything but cute. It has a bizarre strawberry-like body from which 20 spindly arms branch off. Its coloring ranges from purple to dark reddish, and the arms all have different lengths and thickness. Who knows how many more of such scary creatures we'll discover in the future? Well, hey there! We dive back in time and into the oceans over 500 million years ago, just, because we can. Whoa! Watch out! It's not Megalodon or giant sea reptiles you need to look out for here. It's a bizarre, unearthly-looking creature called Anomalocaris. The name means unlike any other shrimp, and I think you'll agree, it looks like a nightmarish cross between a shrimp and a modern-day centipede. 2 tentacles protruding from its face, each lined with razor-sharp teeth. Oh yeah, and this thing was about the size of your leg. With a wave-like movement of the flaps on each side of its body, it was graceful for a terrifying creature. It was also more advanced than any other life on this planet at the time. Especially those huge eyes. You have only one lens in each of yours. This giant shrimp had 16,000. That's 4 times more than a common housefly. And you know how good their vision is. Good enough to dodge that swatter every time. All this allowed Annie to become one of the first animals on this planet to feed on others. Yep, here it is. Earth's first hunter. Its favorite meal? Trilobites. Hey, try a bite. Those are the ancient ancestors of crabs. Some of their fossils have marks on them in the same shape as the monster shrimp's mouthparts. Terrors of the past like this got to be so giant thanks to more oxygen in the atmosphere. A perfect example of this, Meganeuropsis. Imagine a dragonfly. Now make it as big as a cat, and with a wingspan longer than your arm. Megan, the monster-sized dragonfly, could easily grab other insects or even small animals, and she ruled the air with quick movements. Back then, there were still no large birds or other airborne enemies for this behemoth bug, so it was safe and free to grow as large as this planet would allow. Piranhas of the past were also jumbo-sized. Mega Piranha was about 3 times the size of the river terrors we have today. Its bite force was about the same as a tiger's, and those striped kitties bite down 2 times harder than lions. That means it probably not only dined on other fish and any land creatures that, got too close to the water, but it could also easily crunch down on large turtles and other unlucky shelled creatures. And fun fact, modern-day piranhas bark like dogs when they're about to enter a confrontation. It actually sounds more like a frog's ribbit. But makes you wonder, what did this mega-sized ancient cousin sound like? A bear roaring? How about giant sea scorpions the size of your bed? Go back about 460 million years and you'd see them swimming under you. And watch out for that tail. Scientists still don't know if these creatures could use it to inject venom like your standard land scorpion, but something tells me I wouldn't want that thing anywhere near me. Then there's this guy, Therizinosaurus. Terry looks sort of like a goose with long arms. Oh, and did I mention this goose dino is about 2 stories tall and longer than a bus? Yow! Its arms make the T-Rexes look even more bite-sized, each 8 feet long, almost triple the length of T-Rexes. And on the end, razor-sharp claws the size of your whole arm. Now, don't worry about those lengthy claws too much, though. Terry probably used them to cut through giant termite nests. So, this huge reptilian goose was more interested in eating bugs and plants. Another mega monster for you, Megatherium. The giant ground sloth could look a giraffe straight in the eye and weighed as much as a hippo. It moved mainly on its hind legs and used its massive tail as support. He had huge paws with colossal knife-sized claws. The sloth could use them to defend itself from enemies and to bend tree branches in search of food. But the biggest danger to the giant ground sloth wasn't dinosaurs or saber-toothed tigers. It was our own species. Yep, humans showed up just in time to meet this fellow and to, eat him up. Titanoboa was a terrifying 50-foot snake, as long as the great Megalodon itself. It was also more than 2 times heavier than the heavyweight champion among snakes today, the green anaconda. Crocodiles were a regular on this serpent's menu. Titanoboa could swim 3 times faster than the fastest Olympic swimmer our species has ever seen. It was quicker and more dangerous in the water than outside it. And don't forget the boa part of its name. This massive snake wasn't venomous. Instead, it liked to squeeze. Remember that giant shrimp from earlier? Well, Opabenia looks like its teeny-tiny finger-sized cousin. And instead of 2 toothy tentacles, this thing had a vacuum hose coming out of its face. On the end of that trunk, what looks like a single crab claw. Add 5 eyes and a mouth under its head, and you've got a recipe for something not of this planet. Only it is. This creature used its trunk like an elephant does. Its claw grabbed food from the bottom of the ocean and brought it up to its mouth. This thing is so weird-looking that, apparently, when the scientists who discovered it presented his findings to an audience, they all laughed as if he were joking. Now, a real-life monster, the Tully Monster. From a distance, it looks a bit like Nessie, that long neck and teeth-lined jaws. But get closer, and you'll see it's more like a long nose with a mouth attached at the end, like a mosquito. Its eyes are further back, sticking out of tubes all snail-like. Tully was an ancient mollusk, about the size of your forearm. It probably dined on jellyfish and shrimp 300 million years ago. Thylacus smilus will put a smile on your face as long as you don't get too close. No, it's not a relative of the saber-toothed tiger. It was a marsupial, making it more related to a kangaroo than anything. And if you compare them to body size, its fangs were actually longer than a saber-toothed tiger's. And they grew continuously. As for that beard on its chin, that's actually all chin. The lower jawbone grew down to a point under the mouth. Those fangs were rooted to the skull, going way back to its eyes. When the mouth was closed, that bony beard protected the long, sharp teeth from breakage. Staganapolis, not to be confused with Minneapolis, might look like a big crocodile with a squished-in snout, but it was mostly harmless. Its small head and very few teeth meant the reptile didn't have much to work with when protecting itself. That's what all those armored scales were for, and no need for huge fangs or long rows of razor-sharp teeth when you're a plant eater. That beak-like tip on its nose allowed the stag to dig up plants. So, really, this reptile was more like a 10-foot scaly pig than a croc. Basilosaurus was a type of ancient whale that lived on our planet about 45 million years ago. Not quite as long as a blue whale, but this guy was still big enough to munch down on other whales and even sharks. Some people believe these monsters could still exist today. Eyewitnesses claim to have seen a giant sea dragon, and Basilosaurus fits the description. Plus, 90% of our oceans are unexplored. There's plenty of space to hide a sea monster. But scientists haven't found any fossils of this ancient whale younger than 3.7 million years. So, this myth is busted. Stegosaurus is one of the most recognizable dinosaurs that ever lived. It can easily be distinguished by those huge spikes on its tail and the bony plates on its back. It was twice as long as a giraffe and nearly 5 times heavier. But compared to its body size, it had the world's smallest brain. It was no larger than a dog's. Pelagornis had the largest wingspan of any bird ever discovered. It was twice the size of the largest bird today, the wandering albatross. Such huge wings made it hard for the bird to take off. It could only do so by jumping off cliffs. And when it finally spread its wings, this giant could only go about 40 miles per hour. The fastest bird today can reach speeds 5 times that. Now imagine a creature with a body that is reminiscent of a cuttlefish, with eyes sticking out from stalks like a funky headband, fins on its tail, and a long skinny nose ending in a mouth full of teeth. Or maybe this thing could be a claw. Yep, the Tully Monster is on the move. It's definitely one of those freaky creatures you wouldn't like to face while scuba diving somewhere. Luckily, it went extinct 300 million years ago. This unusual marine beast was discovered in the 1950s in Illinois, and scientists couldn't even agree what it really was. Some thought it was a vertebrate, which means a group of creatures with a spine, like us humans. But a team of researchers in Japan studied many fossils of the Tully Monster, using advanced laser scanning technology to check them in detail in 3 dimensions. There's still a lot they don't know about the Tully Monster, but they managed to realize it didn't have any spine at all. Now the next step was to see what type of invertebrate it was. Could it be vertebrate-like, such as a land sled? Or are we talking about something closer to snails and worms? They also discovered the creature had segmentation in the head area that extended from its body, and that's not something bony creatures have. Still, in recent years, some researchers had the idea the Tully beastie could be related to jawless fish, such as lampreys. These fellows belong to the most ancient group of vertebrates, and are not pleasant to see either. In the case of lampreys, we're not talking about extinct animals. They're still out there somewhere, wandering the ocean and scaring other animals, or you, if you see it in the northern and western parts of the Atlantic Ocean where they live. And they've been here really long, even before the dinosaurs. A long time ago, long before humans or I even existed, there were Eurypterids, weird creatures from a group we call arthropods, which includes spiders, insects, and crabs. But Eurypterids were unlike anything you've ever seen before. They had a body shape similar to horseshoe crabs, with many segments that made up their body. Instead of legs, they had special appendages at the front that acted like oars. Some even call them giant scorpions, but most Eurypterids were actually quite small, except for this special one, which was truly enormous. It could grow to a staggering length of about 8 feet. Wow! The next time you see a crab scuttling along the beach or a spider swimming its web, remember, we're lucky we only got mild versions of their ancient relatives, which, by the way, disappeared hundreds of millions of years ago. Whew. Now, some Eurypterids were pretty fierce and fast predators. They would swiftly swim after their prey, chasing them down in the water. Others were more like scavengers, living on the bottom and feeding on whatever they could find along the way. They had a taste for the leftovers, like some sort of cleanup crew of the ancient oceans. Eurypterids love to spend their time in brackish water environments. It's water with more salinity than fresh water, but still less than seawater. Now imagine you're just floating around and all of a sudden you see this guy. No, it's not some weird tiny spaceship, and you won't see it floating in space, even though that's where it would perfectly fit in, as some weird creature from another planet you'd see in sci-fi movies. You'd actually see it floating in the sea because we're talking about a really small animal with enormous eyes called Dilophosaurus. Each of its eye bulbs was about a quarter of its whole body length. That's what gives it that space look, like it might live on one of the oceans under the surface where we look for life, like Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, or Titan, Saturn's biggest moon. I could easily imagine creatures like Dilophosaurus giving us a warm welcome once we get to Mars, too. Dilophosaurus had great vision. It would keep a keen eye out for any movement in its surroundings. Once it noticed something, it would swiftly launch its spiky appendages forward. At first, these things looked like tools for fixing stuff, but Dilophosaurus actually used them to capture smaller arthropods. The unusual thing is that even though it had such great eyesight, Dilophosaurus still spent most of its time catching prey in brighter waters near the surface. And yet, scientists found its fossils in the rock layers that are more often associated with darker environments, where animals such as deep-sea crinoids and vampire squids reside today. It's confusing. But one of the explanations for this says it's possible these deep-sea creatures actually lived in shallower waters in the past and later ended up in the depths as the geography of our planet changed over time. No one knew what Dilophosaurus really was. It could belong to a group of arthropods, and it seems to me that's where most of the world's weirdest creatures are. Some believe it could be related to mantis shrimp, while others compare it to blind, worm-like crustaceans that live in dark underwater caves. And check out this enormous worm lurking beneath the sandy ocean floor, patiently waiting for its next meal to swim by. These ancient creatures were like stealthy predators, perfectly camouflaged in their sandy lairs. And now, 20 million years later, scientists have found the remains of their hidden hideaways. The burrow they discovered, shaped like the letter L, was found preserved in ancient sediment on the seafloor of Taiwan. It was around 7 feet long and only an inch wide. That's where the ancestors of modern bobbit worms lived. Bobbit worms have been around for a long time. They can grow to be a few inches to a whopping 10 feet long. A pretty weird creature dominated the skies at the end of the dinosaur age in North America. We know it as Quetzalcoatlus, and it soared above famous dinosaurs like Tyrannosaurus and Triceratops, showing them who the ultimate ruler of the skies was. Quetzalcoatlus belonged to a group of flying reptiles called pterosaurs. They were some of the biggest flying animals ever known to exist. When you think of Quetzalcoatlus, imagine an animal as tall as a giraffe. These incredible creatures had long necks, small bodies, long legs, and wings that were relatively short compared to their size. The biggest of its kind was really massive and held the title of being the largest flying creature of all time. They had long, pointed skulls, while some also had short crests at the back of their heads. And for a long time, researchers were confused about how these giant pterosaurs hunted for food. At first, some even believed that Quetzalcoatlus and its relatives were like giant vultures that scavenged the remains they would find around. They drew such a conclusion because Quetzalcoatlus fossils were found inland, away from the coast where other big pterosaurs were found, such as the crested Pteranodon. Plus, many thought these fellas were skilled at skimming, which means lurking over freshwater systems and catching fish. But it appears these massive animals were actually predators with excellent hunting skills. The exact technique they used to catch their prey remains a mystery, though. Now here's another cool discovery, a specific fossil as the oldest evidence of muscle tissue ever found. This fossil belongs to a group of animals that includes modern creatures such as jellyfish, corals, and sea anemones. And it looks so cool and unique, right? It has bundles of fibers arranged in a four-fold symmetrical pattern, similar to what we see in Nedardians today. This arrangement is different from any other fossil from that period. Now this fossil may look weird, but it helps us understand the evolution of muscle tissue in animals. All of us actually, got new options for discovering different feeding strategies and generally new things to do thanks to muscles. And it's not like scientists usually get to study fossilized muscles. It's more that they learn about that based on how animals feed, reproduce, move, and do other things. So this cool fossil suggests animals may have had an earlier origin than we used to believe.
There's a lake in the heart of Asia that holds 1/5 of all the world's liquid freshwater. It's more than all the 5 Great Lakes have together. Even if all the rivers on our planet suddenly changed their direction and set on a mission to drain this lake, it would take them a whole year to finish the job. I'm talking about the deepest lake in the world, Lake Baikal. If you decide to go all the way down to its deepest point, prepare for a journey of almost 5,400 feet. The descent takes several hours, but the rift floor of the lake is way deeper, between 5 to 7 miles beneath the surface. It means it could be even further down than the Challenger Deep, which is the deepest known place on Earth. The amount of water it has would be enough for everyone on Earth to have something to drink for up to 50 years. This mighty giant of a lake replenishes its water completely every 383 years. Baikal has a great delivery crew of over 300 rivers and streams, bringing their waters right in. And only one river flows out of Baikal, the Angara, which is headed straight for the Arctic Ocean. Baikal isn't only the deepest, but also the oldest existing freshwater lake in the world. It formed at least 25 million years ago. It all began when the Earth's crust decided to play Tetris and created the lake and the surrounding mountains. At some point, Baikal must have been just a humble riverbed, but then tremors and fractures shook the Earth, and the distance between the shores got bigger. Water levels rose thanks to the melting glaciers. Then, several lakes formed and later merged into one. Baikal is one of around 20 lakes in the world that are older than 1 million years. And since it wasn't disturbed by glacial periods, it's a perfect research ground for scientists. Its deep-drilled core sediments can tell a lot about the climate of our planet in different periods. Since Baikal is in a rift basin with 2,000 seismic tremors per year, the lake is deepening and still growing in size. Its shores drift apart at around the same rate as South America and Africa are moving away from each other, so it has all the potential to become an ocean. Another thing Baikal has in common with the oceans is that it has water rich in oxygen, even at its lowest depths. This is one of the reasons why the fauna of the lake is so incredibly rich. It's home to over 2,500 various animals and 1,000 plant varieties. Around half of them are unique and only exist in this area, like the endemic algae, the Baikal omul fish, and the Baikal oilfish. There are also some bears, elk, and lynx living on its shores. They must appreciate the fact that the temperatures around the lake are always higher than the rest of Siberia, thanks to its huge water mass. Most Baikal dwellers prefer to stick to the bottom of the lake, but there's one brave guy you'll meet if you decide to visit. Meet the Baikal seal, also known as Nerpa. It's the only true freshwater seal in the world. Nerpa's eyes are so cute it nearly landed the part of Puss in Boots in Shrek. Nerpa in Boots sounds good to me. These huge eyes are there to help them follow their favorite pelagic fish underwater. There are other seal kinds that can handle freshwater or use it to breathe, but these cuties spend their entire lives in it. But wait, how did seals, which are supposed to be oceanic creatures, end up in a lake miles and miles away from the sea? About 400,000 years ago, during the Pleistocene era, these adventurous creatures traveled up the river and drainage systems that connected Lake Baikal to the Arctic Ocean. The ringed seal that still lives in the Arctic is believed to be the Baikal seal's closest ancestor. Today, Baikal seals are confined to their freshwater home because of the changes in waterways. And they seem to be pretty happy with their home as they can choose from a huge variety of food to eat. The seals mostly hang out in the north and central areas of the lake, but move south in the winter. The lake gets covered with ice, which they use as a chill-out zone, just like their oceanic cousins use rocks or the beach. Since at least 1969, Lake Baikal has had some mysterious ice rings pop up randomly here and there. At some point, they got so big that the astronauts even spotted them from space. The rings usually appear in late April, but can be there in January or May. Scientists couldn't crack the code on how these rings form for a while. They had all sorts of theories, and the most popular involved methane gas bubbles from the lake's depths. But then, scientists noticed that some of the rings were in shallower waters, where gas emissions don't happen. So, an international team of scientists decided to solve the mystery. They traveled to Lake Baikal, drilled holes in the ice, and dropped sensors into the water. In 2016, when they started the research, they heard that 2 vans had gotten stuck in the mysterious ice rings. Once they had analyzed the data from the sensors, it turned out that the secret behind the rings was warm eddies flowing clockwise under its ice cover. The currents were less intense in the center of the eddies, so the ice above them was thicker at the edges. The waters of the lake are so clear that you can see some extremely deep parts up to over 130 feet down. This is thanks to the surrounding mountains that send off melting ice right in. Plankton that live in the lake also helps clean the floating debris. When this crystal clear water freezes, it forms an unusually thick and see-through layer of ice. The wind likes to play sculptor on Baikal and creates one-of-a-kind pieces of art here. It picks up water, which, of course, freezes into the most unusual designs. Frozen bubbles and icicles you've never seen before. The location and geography of the lakes and the cycles of melting and refreezing create the perfect conditions for this ice workshop. And you can even see rocks that seem to be floating. The bottom of the rock freezes to the surface of the ice. Then, the strong winds wear away the surroundings, leaving a perfect pedestal for the rock. If you think the floating rocks look eerie, how about Baikal's version of the Loch Ness Monster? The local Buryat people have a legend about the water dragon master that lives in the lake. A dragon is believed to be the most powerful creature living on Earth in Asian mythology. They believe there are 4 dragons living in the 4 seas, each responsible for one of the cardinal directions. Baikal is the North Sea in this story. The image of this dragon is supposedly etched in ancient petroglyphs on the cliffs of Baikal. There's also a hefty stone slab that looks like a monument dated back to somewhere between the 3rd and the 9th century BCE, depicting a mysterious water monster. Imagine the stories this stone could tell, echoing the whispers of a bygone era and leaving us to unravel the enigma of the Baikal cliffs. The legend says that a local warrior was chasing the dragon. He finally reached the largest Baikal island of Alkan. He was ready to face and defeat the dragon, but the beast turned into a beautiful girl, and they got married. That's one unusual twist to a classic defeat the dragon and take the girl story. So, local legends describe that dragon as a giant sturgeon with an almost gator-like snout and armored body. In reality, the mythical monster must be one of the many huge fish living in the lake. They can afford to grow to several feet in length thanks to the high levels of oxygen in the water. Beluga sturgeon can weigh several thousands of pounds, lives up to 50 or 60 years, and never stops growing. It's a perfect summer day. You're relaxing on the beach, dipping your toes into the cool water, when suddenly, bam! A 56-foot aquatic nightmare rockets from the waves. It's the size of 2 London double-decker buses, sporting about 60 razor-sharp teeth, including bonus chompers on the roof of its mouth, because why not? This aquatic beast isn't picky about its diet either. Sharks? Turtles? Other sea monsters? Yep, they're all on the menu. Meet the Mosasaurus, a group of marine reptiles that ruled the oceans millions of years ago. If you've seen Jurassic World, you'll recognize them as the stars of that epic moment when a massive creature leaps out of the water to snatch a great white shark like it's sushi. That's a Mosasaurus, and it's every bit as terrifying as it sounds. Recently, scientists stumbled upon a fossil of one of those marine monsters in, of all places, Mississippi. Yes, Mississippi, the land of magnolias and catfish. Turns out it's also home to ancient sea dragons. This discovery was a happy accident. A team of geologists was mapping the terrain in east-central Mississippi when they noticed something strange poking out of the ground. It wasn't a rock or a seashell. It was a vertebra, and a massive one. In fact, it was so large it barely fit in the hand of the scientist who found it. The fossil likely belonged to the largest known species of mosasaur, the Mosasaurus hoffmanni. Now, the biggest mosasaur ever found clocked in at a staggering 56 feet long. This new specimen hit a solid 30 feet at least, and while it might not break the world record, it certainly makes the crown for the biggest mosasaur ever discovered in Mississippi. Fun fact, that's still longer than the average RV, and with way worse gas mileage. To be fair, the Mississippi Museum of Natural Science already had a couple of mosasaur fossils in its collection. But this newcomer might just steal the spotlight. And this isn't an isolated incident. In 2015, paleontologists unearthed the skull of a 24-foot-long mosasaur in North Dakota. Years later, a private fossil hunter, yes, that's a thing, found an equally huge mosasaur in Texas. Well, its jaw at least. These sea monsters, also known as sea dragons, by the way, actually have one of the wildest origin stories in paleontology. The very first skull was found way back in 1764 in a chalk quarry in the Netherlands. And at the time, scientists thought it was a whale. Then came a second skull, which was so impressive that French revolutionaries literally looted it during the siege in 1794. Legend has it they swapped it for 600 bottles of wine. Doesn't sound like a fair trade to me. That fossil actually helped pioneer the concept of extinction and got paleontologists buzzing for centuries. Since then, mosasaur fossils have popped up all over the world, like ancient scaly celebrities leaving their mark. From the Mississippi backwoods to the deserts of Morocco, from New Jersey to Belgium, scientists have uncovered everything from teeth to full skulls, sometimes even misplacing them in museum drawers for centuries. So what exactly were these terrifying titans of the deep? Well, let's just say, if ancient oceans had a most likely to eat everything in sight award, the mosasaur would win it. Picture a gigantic scaly torpedo with a mouth full of about 60 razor-sharp teeth, including some growing on the roof of its mouth like dental overkill. It had a long, muscular tail for propulsion and 4 paddle-like limbs that worked like turbocharged oars, letting it cruise through warm, shallow seas like a reptilian speedboat. Scientists believe they were close relatives of modern monitor lizards and snakes, which honestly just makes both of those animals way more terrifying. Some mosasaurs even might have had adaptations for sensing vibrations in the water, allowing them to detect movement from a distance, similar to how sharks use electroreception today. Their eyes were well developed too, giving them sharp vision in the dim ocean depths, a key advantage when hunting fast or elusive prey. But what really makes mosasaurs the stuff of prehistoric nightmares is their attitude. They were apex predators, and they knew it. Those sea monsters weren't picky eaters. Fish, turtles, birds, sharks, other mosasaurs. Basically anything that moved was dinner. Fossilized mosasaur stomach contents prove they practiced family dinner in the most metal way possible. If they were around today, your beach day would be a lot more exciting, and probably shorter. These guys were so intense, they dominated the whole world. It's safe to say, mosasaurs were the undisputed rulers of the late Cretaceous oceans. And like today's orcas or great white sharks, they probably used ambush tactics, sneaking up on prey from below before striking with explosive force. Bite marks found on the fossilized bones of turtles and even other mosasaurs suggest intense underwater battles worthy of a blockbuster movie. But how did one end up in Mississippi of all places? Well, rewind the clock about 80 million years and you'll find part of North America underwater. A vast shallow sea known as the Western Interior Seaway split the continent in two, running from the Gulf of Mexico to the Arctic Ocean. It was warm, teeming with life, and yes, crawling with sea monsters. This prehistoric seaway was a watery wonderland. Imagine long-necked plesiosaurs gliding through the water, birds with teeth diving for fish, and oysters the size of car tires clinging to reef-like structures. Even giant fish like this weird guy over here called it home. This ancient inland sea stretched over 600 miles wide in some places, but it was no more than a few hundred feet deep, making it ideal territory for predators like mesosaurs to thrive. The shallow depth also meant that their prey had few places to hide, turning the seaway into a prehistoric buffet. But the western interior seaway wasn't a permanent fixture. As the Rocky Mountains rose, the seaway slowly disappeared. Over millions of years, it transformed from a shallow ocean to swamps and then to dry land. Today, what was once an ocean is now the Midwest, complete with cornfields, cows, and the occasion mosasaur vertebra hiding in the dirt. Now, this wasn't exactly the end of the mosasaurs. Sadly, even these monsters couldn't outswim extinction. Those massive sea beasts met their watery grave around 66 million years ago, when Earth got an unwelcome visitor, a 10-mile-wide asteroid. When that space rock slammed into what is now Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, it unleashed destruction on a planetary scale. The impact triggered massive tsunamis, set forests ablaze, and shot so much debris into the atmosphere that sunlight was blocked out for months, maybe even years. This impact winter plunged Earth into a deep freeze. With sunlight gone, plants couldn't photosynthesize, and the food chain collapsed like a house of cards. On land, plant eaters starved, and predators like T-Rex soon followed. About 75% of all species on Earth disappeared. But don't think the oceans were a safe retreat. The seas were hit just as hard, if not worse. First came the mega tsunami that devastated marine life along coastlines. Then, the real villain arrived. You see, without sunlight, phytoplankton, those tiny microscopic plants that serve as the foundation of the marine food web, perished. With them went zooplankton, small fish and filter feeders. And when the buffet dried up, the big predators like the mosasaurs went hungry. No food, no future. With plunging temperatures and ocean acidification, even the ocean's top predators couldn't survive. Mosasaurs, along with plesiosaurs and ammonites, were wiped out in the blink of a geological eye. So ended the reign of sea monsters. The good news is that you can now swim at peace knowing that no sea dragon will ever come at you. I mean, it's a bummer that they went extinct, but let's be honest. Beach days are way more relaxing without 56-foot lizards crashing the party.
Think you know what lurks in the depths of the ocean? While nearly 95% of our oceans haven't been explored yet, it's hard not to let your imagination run wild. But thanks to brave explorers, deep-sea cameras, and awesome archaeologists, we do know about some pretty incredible sea creatures living in our waters today, and millions of years ago. From the 9-foot spider crab to the 60-foot prehistoric Megalodon, these sea dwellers come in all shapes and sizes. But let's focus on sea creatures famous for their huge size. Can you guess which living species of whale is the largest? Well, it's not the orca, but that's a good guess. The orca is a toothed whale that can grow to anywhere from 23 feet to 32 feet, which is slightly smaller than a school bus. How about the narwhal? Nope, they're not the biggest either. These unicorns of the sea live mainly in Arctic waters and only grow 13 feet to 20 feet in length, and that's including their 9-foot tusk. Tired of guessing? Okay, I give in. The largest whale that still exists today is the blue whale. At a jaw-dropping 82 feet to 105 feet, the blue whale is not only the biggest whale we know of, but is currently the largest animal to have ever lived on Earth. Seriously. These animals are bigger than a T-Rex, and even the prehistoric Megalodon. If you were to put a blue whale next to a school bus, it would look like it could swallow it. Think about that. According to National Geographic, a blue whale's tongue can weigh the same as an elephant. And their hearts can weigh as much as a car. That doesn't even sound possible. It's no wonder these giants need to eat about 4 tons of krill every day. While there aren't too many animals living today that can compete with the blue whale's epic proportions, there is an entirely different species that is a good contender, and it's not quite what you would expect. It's a jellyfish. No, I'm not talking about the little jellyfish that wash up on the shore and ruin a perfectly good day at the beach. I'm referring to the lion's mane jellyfish, the biggest jellyfish around. This invertebrate
can grow up to 120 feet long. They also come in different gorgeous colors like red, purple, or even shades of orange. As if their length wasn't impressive, the lion's mane jellyfish boast a whopping 8 sets of 70 to 150 tentacles. That means they can have up to 1,200 in total. And here's the giant oceanic manta ray, the largest type of ray in the world. Their wingspan can be longer than a bus. These guys can reach 30 feet in length. They also have the biggest brain compared to body size among all fish. Unlike their stingray cousins, mantas don't have venomous tails. And while the lion's mane jellyfish and the blue whale are yet to be beaten for the longest sea creature, there is one marine creature that can grow even larger in length. The Portuguese Physalia physalis, tentacles and all, can reach a length of 165 feet long, and that's according to mentalfloss.com. While this thing may look a lot like a jellyfish, it's actually known as a siphonophore, and there are hundreds and sometimes thousands of them that are genetically identical. Their long tentacles help the organism catch prey, and its sting is fatal to most animals, even humans in some cases. What's even creepier is that if one of the tentacles comes off the organism for whatever reason, it can float around the water for days before decomposing. Even if it's detached, this tentacle can still sting you. But don't go running out of the ocean just yet. Your chances of being hurt by a Portuguese Physalia physalis sting are pretty slim. However, if you do get stung, the side effects aren't pretty, with welts, stomach cramps, an elevated heart rate, and an upset stomach. While you don't want to go anywhere near these long creatures, they sure are pretty to look at. Check out all those colors. The Shonisaurus is the biggest marine reptile that has ever existed. These predators lived during the late Triassic period, about 210 million years ago. These amazing giants could reach lengths of up to 69 feet and weighed more than 75 tons. This made the Shonisaurus as heavy as a blue whale. And if you could stand this creature up vertically, it'd be as tall as a 7-story building. Despite appearances, the Shonisaurus was actually pretty slim for its size. Its ribcage was only 6 feet across. You'd think that this big guy was chowing down on other dinosaurs, but that's not the case at all. This reptile survived on a diet that consisted of small fish and cephalopods, like octopuses and squids. The Albertonectes is a bright representative of the plesiosaur family, meaning that this marine reptile had a small head on an incredibly long neck and large flipper-like limbs that helped it move through the water. These creatures occupied the seas around North America 76 to 70 million years ago. The length of this sea monster could reach 38 feet, with its neck taking up 23 feet of that length. Its neck was a true record breaker. It had a whopping 76 bones in it. No other animal known to humankind has had so many vertebrae in its neck. Scientists aren't sure why they needed such a lengthy neck. They might have used it to collect shellfish off the seabed, or perhaps it helped them capture their main prey, fish and squids. This aquatic reptile also had gastroliths in its stomachs. Some of them were as big as 5.5 inches in diameter. The Tylosaurus belonged to the Mosasaur family. It dominated the shallow seas of North America about 85 to 80 million years ago. This was an enormous predator, with the biggest representatives reaching 45 feet in length. It had a narrow hydrodynamic body with a blunt, powerful head that the animal used to ram and stun its prey. Its body was equipped with agile flippers and a long tail decorated with a maneuverable fin. The Tylosaurus was a carnivore, and its diet included not only fish, turtles, and small sharks, but also other mosasaurs, plesiosaurs, and flightless birds. Meet Ophthalmosaurus. This prehistoric reptile thrived during the late Jurassic period and lived in oceans all over the world. Ophthalmosaurus weighed somewhere around 6,000 pounds and grew to approximately 16 feet long, according to newdinosaurs.com. That's about the same length as the beluga whale that exists today. It's too bad these guys went extinct before we had a chance to see them ourselves, as their cartoonish wide eyes and dolphin-like features are pretty darn cute. Of course, the Ophthalmosaurus evolved over time to become ophthalmologists, or eye doctors that we know today. No, that's just a lie. Just testing you. The Mosasaurus is a truly gigantic predator that dominated the seas all over the world about 66 million years ago. According to fossil evidence, some specimens could be more than 50 feet in length. This fact makes the Mosasaurus the biggest marine carnivore of its time. One of the most terrifying things about this creature was its crocodile-like head, decorated with literally hundreds of razor-sharp teeth, neatly organized in 2 rows on both jaws. The thing is that it was pretty challenging for the Mosasaurus to grab its prey in the water. That's why it had all these teeth, plus something special: pterygoid teeth anchored to the bones on the roof of its mouth. This made hunting and holding onto its prey much easier. The Styxosaurus belonged to the plesiosaur family and lived during the late Cretaceous period, around 85 to 70 million years ago. Upon first glance at this dinosaur, you might mistake it for a sea snake, and it'd be an honest mistake. There are plenty of fish in the sea. Some of them look totally like Nemo or Dory. Then there's the butterfly fish and fancy guppy, which is indeed really fancy. And then there's... What on earth is that? I would definitely not pay for a diving experience to see this guy. The anglerfish has the unofficial title of the ugliest animal in the world, but I wouldn't dare to break that news to it. There are more than 200 species of anglerfish currently swimming somewhere in the gloomy depths of the Atlantic and Antarctic Oceans, up to a mile below the surface. Some of them prefer different living conditions, the shallow tropical environments. Different kinds of anglerfish vary in shape and size, from the famous black sea devil to frogfish, monkfish, footballfish, goosefish, batfish, and sea toad. The larger ones can be half as long as a full-sized bed, but most are less than a foot long. Since the choice of meals where these guys live isn't that huge, they had to come up with a unique hunting strategy. They don't waste their priceless life energy on following prospective prey. Instead, they use a piece of dorsal spine that sticks above their mouths like a fishing pole, hence the name of the fish. There's a sac of bioluminescent bacteria that glows brightly in the dark at the end of that rod. The light lures prey, and all the anglerfish has to do is wait, and then enjoy its lunch delivered right to its mouth. Their bodies are pliable and huge, so they can easily swallow prey twice their size. Deep-sea anglerfish eat whatever they can find. Species that live in more shallow water aren't picky either, and can eat anything from shrimp to snails and small fish. Only female anglerfish have the cool fishing rod feature though. So what about their males? Finding a soulmate deep under the sea isn't that easy. I mean, literally, there's no light down there. Plus, there are frigid temperatures and low oxygen levels. Anglerfish can't afford to go on many dates in those conditions, so they mate for life. And before you go aw about it, I have to tell you, they do it in quite a special way. Male anglerfish are much smaller than their ladies. The contrast is so striking that when researchers first got interested in their love life, they thought those males were actually the offspring, or larvae, hanging out next to their moms. Certain anglerfish male species have receptors that alert them that there's a female nearby. After they mate, the male bites into his woman and stays attached to her head, belly, near her tail, and other areas he can access. While they morph together forever, the female fish gets the male's cells, DNA, and reproductive organs, but loses her immune response cells. The male gets free permanent housing and nutrition. Given the current real estate prices, it sounds like a dream. But that accommodation is shared by up to 8 males, and they can't move out if they ever feel like it. You're unlikely to meet this deep-sea fish in real life, but if you meet an anglerfish in your favorite video game, Remember that you can easily outswim it and make it kinder to you with tranquilizing arrows. Once you befriend it, the anglerfish can be your scout and help you discover new areas with its bioluminescent pods. Back in the real world, down in the twilight zone of the ocean, about 650 to 3,300 feet down, the anglerfish isn't the only creature you're lucky you'll probably never meet. Many of the locals look like they come straight out of science fiction or horror movies, but that's because they had to adapt to this dark, deep world. I did my best to get you prepared for the creatures you're going to meet, starting with the common fangtooth. They spend most of their lives deep down, but at night, they move toward the surface to snack. These guys are more active than most other deep-sea dwellers. They don't wait for food to come their way, but actually follow it, and then get it with their long, hungry teeth. They don't have a built-in light bulb like the anglerfish, so they've developed a great sense of smell and use as much sunlight as they can get there in the depth to get around. Sometimes, even the shadow of a passing by prospective prey is enough for them to switch to action mode. And though they don't look too charming, they're completely harmless to humans if you ever run into one of these guys. Stoplight Loosejaw sounds like a great name for an alternative band, but it's actually another deep-sea resident with sneaky hunting habits. It has special light-producing photophores under each eye. They emit green and red light like a stoplight, hence the name of the fish. Unlike other fish, these guys hardly ever leave the twilight and midnight zones. Their lower jaw is a quarter of the total body length, and the stoplight keeps it open all the time, hoping to get some lunch. It looks like a ferocious predator, but mostly prefers zooplankton with an occasional dessert of shrimp, krill, and fish. I'm sure you didn't expect to meet a hybrid of an eel and a bird, but here it is! The slender snipe eel has a beak, much like that of a bird, with curving tips. The beak is equipped with tiny hooked teeth that the eels use to catch the antennae of delicious shrimp. And it sure is slender, stretching up to 5 feet and weighing only a few ounces. Scientists don't know all of this guy's secrets, since it's pretty tricky to study in their natural habitat. But it looks like they only produce offspring once in a lifetime, and then pass away. Glass squids like to take it easy in life, and literally go with the flow. They're filled with a solution which is lighter than water, so they don't have to make any effort to move around the deep sea, looking for food and partners. These creatures are transparent, so they blend into any landscape and don't even cast a shadow while moving. Talk about a great survival tactic. If danger finds it anyway, it can transform into a lumpy ball, pushing its head and tentacles into its mantle cavity. It can also release ink into the mantle and go from transparent to black. The same ink can protect it against hungry whales and seabirds. Another tactic they use to scare off predators is to activate their light-emitting organs around their eyes. I'm getting hungry. Maybe I can snack on this sea cucumber. Ouch, it's moving! So I guess it doesn't belong in a salad after all. These soft-bodied fellows live in all parts of the ocean, from shallow waters to the deep underwater world. Most of them slowly move around with their tiny feet, but some crawl around by flexing their bodies. Sea cucumbers can shed their internal organs when there's a predator approaching. Those sticky organs distract the intruder, and the happy cucumber moves on and just grows the organs back. What's that glistening in the distance? Looks like someone dropped gems in the water. That's a sea sapphire, also known as the most beautiful animal you've never seen. Some males of this type of copepod can change color from deep blue to purple, red, or gold. 1 second later, it's gone. And then it's back, shimmering bright. The secret to this magic is that their bodies are transparent and reflect light differently at certain angles. It looks like it's their way of communicating between each other and attracting mates. Female sea sapphires don't have the same superpower, but their eyes are bigger compared to males, probably to spot them from a distance. Males roam wild and free, and their ladies stay in the crystal palaces of strange barrel-shaped jellies called salps. The deeper you go, the creepier they get. You're about to travel to the darkest ocean depths and check whether this claim is true. Are the creatures living there as scary as people think? You go 120 feet down underwater. Pay close attention to the bottom under your flippers. Oh my, what's that terrifying face half hidden in the sand? That's the northern stargazer. You can meet this fish in the eastern United States. It buries itself in the sand until unsuspecting prey gets near. Then, the nightmarish creature electrically shocks the poor animal and dines on it. You are moving deeper to 240 feet under the surface. That's where you spot a colorful, puffy creature, no more than 1 foot long. It's the sarcastic fringehead. At first, the fish seems to be harmless. Only unless it's provoked. When this animal is agitated, it opens its huge mouth to fend off predators. This defense tactic is a sight to behold, both surprising and frightening. Luckily, the fish is no threat to people whatsoever. The creature you see next can comfortably live in shallow waters, but you meet it at a depth of 900 feet. You don't even need to wonder why the animal's called the Game of Thrones brittle star. Unlike starfish that slowly crawl across the seabed, this creature moves fast. It wriggles its long, flexible arms to get from point A to point B. Its body is protected by a hard calcium carbonate shell. Also called snake stars, these creatures are tiny and easily fit in nooks, cracks, and small crevices in rocks. At a much greater depth of 2,000 feet, you come across the giant squid. For a long time, it was thought to be a creature from legends rather than a real animal. The giant squid was first caught on camera in 2001, and it's exactly as big as its name implies. The creature's eyeballs are the size of soccer balls, and the squid itself can weigh up to 600 pounds. Almost 3,000 feet below the surface, you get spooked by another creepy-looking animal. It's somewhat red and rather small, no longer than 1 foot long. As you approach the creature, it looks rather docile, or maybe just indifferent. The vampire squid, that's the animal's name, looks like an umbrella with tentacles. It doesn't even produce ink, so you leave it alone. Soon after that, at a depth of 3,200 feet, you meet the cookie cutter shark. This creature is a parasite. It attaches itself to big fishes, dolphins, whales, and sometimes even people. Then, using its neatly arranged serrated teeth, it gouges out cookie-sized pieces of meat. This nasty glowing animal doesn't grow larger than 20 inches and lives in the ocean twilight zone. At a depth of 3,300 feet, the light becomes a rare and valuable thing. The animals living that far away from the surface have to evolve unusual features to survive. That's how the barrel-eye fish ended up with a transparent head and 2 super-sensitive barrel-shaped eyes. Right now, pretty much like always, they're pointed upward, allowing the fish to see potential prey and you. Almost 4,000 feet below the surface, you see something droopy and saggy. The blobfish doesn't have a skeleton or any muscle. Its jelly-like flesh lets the creature survive incredible water pressure. Despite its appearance, the blobfish is an ambush predator. It usually lies very still on the bottom, waiting for unsuspecting prey to swim by. You go a bit deeper and spot a creature that looks particularly ghastly. The goblin shark senses prey with its snout. The creature's terrifying jaws are attached to elastic ligaments. When some animal comes too close, the shark catapults its mouth forward to catch it. If your mouth could do the same, you would be able to eat things dangling 7 inches away from your face. Even deeper than that, at 5,000 feet, you notice another member of the shark family. The frilled shark looks like an overgrown eel, but its gills are lined with red fringe at the edges, hence the name. The creature's horrifying mouth has 25 rows of razor-sharp backward-facing teeth, 300 in total. The shark prefers to hover in the water, waiting for its prey to come closer. Then, it charges at it like a snake. Suddenly, you see something glow brightly like an electric bulb. But after coming closer, you recoil in horror. The creature looks like an upgraded eel equipped with oversized teeth. That's the deep-sea dragonfish that can live at a depth of 6,000 feet. Chemical processes going on inside the fish's body produce an eerie red glow. This glow is used to communicate with other fish. At the same depth, you meet another deep-sea inhabitant. Its most prominent feature is its huge mouth. Thanks to it, the gulper eel can swallow its prey whole. Its stomach can expand to a terrifying size when it needs to fit something large. At a depth of 6,600 feet, you come across an angry-looking creature with a fishing rod over its head. It's the deep-sea anglerfish. The animal has an unusual dorsal spine, even though it's worn only by females. It protrudes above their mouth and has a lure on its tip, some luminous flesh that baits prey. The anglerfish has such a big mouth and its body is so pliable that it can swallow animals twice its own size. You're 7,000 feet down when you see another fish that's glowing in the dark. The black dragonfish is a sly creature. It has its light-producing organs arranged along its belly. The spooky creature also has gleaming flashlights next to its eyes. They help the animal find prey and attract potential mates. At the same depth, you also spot an enormous pill bug. But unlike the critter you can find in your garden, this one is at least 20 inches long. That's the giant isopod, and it is, indeed, related to the roly-poly, as well as crabs and shrimps. These creatures may look somewhat scary, but they're harmless. They feast on other deep-sea animals only after those have passed away. At a depth of 13,000 feet, you notice the ocean floor has become a bit fluffy. That's because it's covered with zombie worms. These creatures rarely grow to be more than 2 inches long, and still, they can break down fairly large animals, so strong the acid they produce is. The worms' feathery appearance makes them look like plants, but the truth is, these creatures munch on rock-hard bones of the world's largest animals, such as whales. The grid-eye fish almost scares you out of your mind soon after that. This creature has a pair of large greenish oval plates on the top of its head and no eyes whatsoever. Experts believe that these bony membranes detect light coming from predators, saving the fish's life. You're now 3 miles down below the surface, and that's where you spot something bizarre on the bottom. It's definitely a fish, but it's standing on the ocean floor on 3 long, rigid legs. Ah, it's the tripod fish. Curious rather than scary. This creature has adapted to the almost complete darkness by giving up on its vision. It has to rely on vibration and touch to sense prey. And then, the fish uses its fins as hands to transport food directly into its mouth. You don't have time to go any deeper before you spot the faceless fish. This slightly off-putting creature has no eyes, and its mouth, smiling a Mona Lisa smile, is underneath its body. For the first time, the faceless cusk, which is the creature's official name, was seen more than a century ago. The next time it happened was only in 2017. Once you've reached a depth of 6 miles below the surface, you see deep-sea cucumbers. These bizarre creatures are much bigger than their shallow water relatives. They spend most of their time on the sea floor. But if they need to escape predators, they are able to swim away. Deep-sea cucumbers have bright purplish coloring, tiny feet, and tentacles that surround their mouths. Cute. The question is, why do these deep-sea creatures look so scary? Life is very different there, at the bottom. Tremendous water pressure, a lack of food, and constant darkness. You have to adapt to survive in such extreme conditions.
How heavy is the largest living snake? How can a snake eat a whale? Get ready, I'm about to answer these questions. Before the last ice age, giant mammals like mammoths ruled the world. The modern animal kingdom we're familiar with was shaped around 55 million years ago. I mean, there were still 1,000-pound bear dogs living from Asia to America. But modern whales, for instance, began to appear later. I'm saying modern whales because, surprise, surprise, whales weren't always fully aquatic. the ancestors of the ocean's biggest animals once walked on dry land. They had 4 legs and lived on the coast. Now, I want to introduce you to a snake that used to eat these whales, the Paleophis, a genus of a marine snake. Scientists say it's hard to understand how big the Paleophis was due to its fragmentary fossil record. They assumed that it could have reached up to 40 feet long. Its fossils were found in different parts of the world, from England to Morocco and Virginia, USA. The Paleophis is extinct now, and sea snakes today are only about a quarter of the size this majestic creature used to be. So no need to worry about this underwater monster. But there once was an even bigger snake, the Titan boa. It was around 50 feet long and most likely weighed over a ton. It used to live in what is now known as northeastern Colombia around 60 to 58 million years ago. Scientists say that it mostly fed on fish. Another giant animal that lived in the past was the black Gigantopithecus. These primates aren't related to gorillas. They lived in the area of modern China. Some people believe that they're still alive, but so far, no one has laid eyes on them. Some people even go further and say that the stories of Bigfoot or Yeti are based on these animals. This rodent became extinct about 2 million years ago. Its main habitat was South America, more specifically, Uruguay. What's astonishing about this species is that it was the largest rodent ever known. It was bigger than a bull. Scientists believe that it weighed up to 1,000 pounds. A distant relative of this rodent is still alive today. It's called the Piranha. It's a rare animal that lives in South America. It weighs up to 33 pounds and measures up to 31 inches, not including its cute and fluffy tail. The Arthropleura was an insect that lived in prehistoric times. Imagine a giant millipede measuring up to 8 feet in length. Here you go. It was one of the largest land animals of its era, about 315 million years ago. The Arthropleura's shell was covered with tough plates. These plates were there to protect the creature from damage. Most of the time, it burrowed into the ground to avoid becoming some other animal's dinner. Meet the Megalodon. Millions of years ago, this shark lived in the ocean and ate other marine creatures. It had wide teeth, and its jaws were so powerful that the animal could finish off its prey with the force of its bite. It was one of the largest sharks to ever exist. Yet, this predator also went extinct. Scientists don't really know the reason. This made me wonder why animals were so big in the past. Nowadays, smaller creatures flee or hide from predators. But apparently, it wasn't like this before. Many centuries ago, animals didn't just run or hide, they fought back. Research suggests that this behavior may have been the most important motivation for prey to grow bigger. A study compared the skulls of ancient animals to those of their modern peers. The skulls of predatory animals have become shorter and narrower, while the skulls of the animals they hunted have become longer and broader. This means that predators learned to become experts in hunting, while prey worked on developing their defense skills. You see, a larger body size was a great advantage because it made it harder for predators to take down the animals they hunted. The bottom line, self-defense made prehistoric animals larger. The second reason why ancient animals were larger is related to their bones. They had hollow bones, which are lighter than solid bones. This type of bone allowed large animals to move quickly. Let's take sauropods. They were a dinosaur subgroup. Sauropods had giraffe-like long necks and snake-like long tails. Compared to their body size, their head was really tiny. But since their bones were quite light, they could move around without having to carry additional weight. The eating habits of these animals were also related to their body size. When experts examined the fossils of one extinct mammal species, they found out that these animals had a diet that was high in nutrients and low in fiber. And this mammal was the largest land animal of its period. In other words, following this diet, mammals could grow to be very large. There was plenty of food out there, so they didn't have to worry about finding it. Fun fact, these animals also took chewing out of the picture. They could swallow their food in large pieces instead of taking small bites. Environmental conditions also played an important role in the evolution of larger animals in prehistoric times. Those animals tended to live in warm, moist climates that provided them with a lot of food. They didn't have to compete for food sources. Researchers believe that because of these conditions, natural selection worked in a certain way. I mean, body size was more important than such traits as agility and speed. Oh, and did you know that large animals tend to produce more carbon dioxide? And ultimately, a bigger volume of carbon dioxide increases the amount of vegetation in the animal's habitat. As for the abundance of oxygen in the atmosphere at that time, it could be another vital element for some animals' growth. A good but scary example of an animal that benefited from the high levels of oxygen can be the cockroach of the Paleozoic era. At that time, cockroaches were the size of modern house cats. Now this one would give me the chills if I ever faced it. Ugh. What about today? Well, there are over 3,000 species of snakes on Earth. The smallest snake in the world is the Barbados thread snake. It's only around 4 inches long when fully grown, and the largest one? It's the reticulated python. This snake reaches around 20 feet in length. The longest python was discovered in 1912. It measured 32 feet long. As for the largest and heaviest reticulated python, it was named Medusa. Medusa was approximately 25 feet long and weighed 350 pounds. These reptiles lived in Southeast Asia in rainforests, woodlands, and grasslands. Don't be confused though, the reticulated python isn't the heaviest snake in the world. This title belongs to the green anaconda. It weighs approximately 500 pounds. Green anacondas are found in South America and Trinidad in damp, humid areas. I have a bonus for you. Here is a flying snake. You can find these snakes in Southeast Asia. They don't fly like birds, of course, but they do use the power of flight. They can go as high as 300 feet. They leap from tree branches into the air. Once they take off, it's all about aerodynamics. Their main technique is flaring their ribs and pulling in their abdomens. While airborne, they undulate from one side to another and slightly up and down. This motion helps snakes to turn and glide. Why bother with all this if they can just crawl in an old-school way? Scientists aren't sure, but they believe it might be related to escaping from predators. This way, they move from one tree to another without having to get down to the ground. Every now and then, people discover fossils of animals that lived millions of years ago. These ancient discoveries continue to capture our imagination. Which of these animals would you like to see alive? The giant shark that terrorized the oceans some 20 million years ago. For 13 million years, this 60-ton beast dominated the warm waters of our planet. Though, some believe that the Meg still lives in the most remote and deepest parts of the ocean. It's a hot summer day. It seems only logical to go for a swim in the sea. You're floating on your back, completely relaxed. Your eyes are closed. Your breath is even. Water's pleasantly cool around your body. A light breeze touches your face. You feel calm enough to doze off. Suddenly, something bumps into your leg. Yanked out of your half-slumber, you begin to flail until you're face-to-face with the invisible danger. Luckily, all you spot is a couple of easily recognizable fins and cute smiley snouts. Phew, just dolphins. Guess you're lucky to meet them in the wild. These amazing creatures are so close, you can touch them. You've heard people say dolphins' skin feels rubbery, but to your mind, it's more like the inner part of a hard-boiled egg. One of the animals is so close to you that its salty smell fills your nostrils. You know, though, that dolphins don't have sweat glands. It means they don't sweat and are pretty much odorless. The smell you sense comes from the water they swim in. The largest and most ferocious predator to ever haunt the oceans, the Megalodon shark dominated the seas for centuries before coming extinct millions of years ago. However, scientists managed to discover very few remnants of the giant shark. Everything we know about the great beast we've learned thanks to fossils of its giant teeth, which are just about the size of the average human hand. A megalodon skeleton has never been discovered. Shark skeletons are made mostly of cartilage, meaning that they decompose quickly. Luckily, sharks continuously shed and regrow teeth throughout their lives. One shark can go through 40,000 teeth in a single lifetime. Scientists have managed to study different types of shark species based on their teeth alone. The megalodon shark had around 276 teeth. When they fell out, those teeth landed in the seabed where they stayed for millions of years, fossilizing. Scientists found those teeth, and they're the only real record we have of the megalodon's existence. Megalodon teeth have been discovered all over the world. It means that unlike other marine animals of its time, the megalodon was intercontinental. Even today, most sharks and marine animals tend to stick to one sea or ocean. The megalodon shark swam freely around the world, moving between tropical and subtropical waters. Megalodon teeth have been found in every continent apart from the freezing cold waters of Antarctica. When a megalodon makes a starring appearance in a movie or TV show, it's portrayed to look like a giant version of a great white shark. Scientists previously believed that the megalodon and the great white shark both descended from one common ancestor. Still, it's not true. In fact, it's more likely that the megalodon was the arch enemy of the great white shark's ancestor, the broad-toothed mako shark. That means Megalodon wouldn't have looked so similar to the great white after all. In reality, the Megalodon would have a shorter nose than the great white, along with longer pectoral fins to give the giant shark a stockier and more threatening build. They both had an excellent sense of smell though, so even in prehistoric times, it wasn't a good idea to go swimming with a chunk of raw meat in hand. And it certainly isn't safe now. Whether the Meg's hiding somewhere in the depths, which some still believe is true, or it's gone forever, younger cousins will still be there waiting. Also, both of them like to go after big marine mammals, so they would certainly have things to do together. That is, until the Meg got moody and accidentally ate its friend. You never know. These guys had a different hunting style. Great whites prefer to dive straight towards their prey and find its softest spot, like exposed legs or underbelly. Sometimes, an entire tooth would be found embedded in a bone of some bigger animal, such as a whale. Without the main parts they use for swimming, poor sea animals were then helpless and unable to escape. Yet whales were just a smaller part of Megalodon's diet. Seals, sea cows, squids, dolphins, other sharks. The good old Meg probably wouldn't say no to some random school of smaller fish swimming into its mouth either. Nothing better than a good snack after a big tasty dinner. Even those giant turtles weren't safe with their thick shells. The Meg probably took them as a dare challenge on a daily basis. Scientists have used computer simulations to try and work out the hunting style of the ancient shark. Using this technology, scientists have discovered that the Megalodon's attack style was very different from that of modern-day sharks. Modern sharks dive straight for their prey's most vulnerable spot, for example, the soft underbelly of a seal. The Megalodon's teeth were uniquely suited to biting through tougher areas of cartilage. So, evidence suggests that a Megalodon would first chew the tougher fins of their prey, rendering them unable to swim away before launching into their final attack. Some people believe that the Megalodon is still alive today, lurking at the depths of the ocean's waters. But it's unlikely to be true. Megalodons are a warm water species, which means they would be unable to survive in the cold waters of the deep ocean. Most of the Megalodon's potential prey live in shallower waters, meaning there would be very little for the Megalodon to eat at deep sea level. Simply put, if there was an animal as big as the Megalodon still living today, we would have spotted it by now. It is unlikely that you'll run into a Meg though. The sharks, like us, preferred warm coastal waters. Deep ocean living would be too cold for the beasts, and food would be scarce. Their entire bodies would also have to evolve to avoid being squished by the enormous water pressure down there. It's unlikely they're still around, but not impossible. Some good news if you do run into one is that the shark is pretty unlikely to eat you. You are way too small a meal for the Megalodon, even if you have a couple of friends with you. This guy eats whales that are over 50 feet long. If you're having a beach party though, it's a different story. In a beach full of swimmers, The shark very well might creep up, scooping several humans into its giant mouth without even chewing. The fearsome name Megalodon comes from two Greek words, megas, meaning big, and odont, meaning tooth. Combined, they mean big tooth, and it certainly lives up to its name. Just one of its chompers is the same size as a human head. It had 276 humongous teeth in total, across 5 terrifying rows. In all of history, only a couple of saber-toothed cats and the T-Rex had consistently bigger teeth. Now that's a showdown I'd like to watch. The Megalodon vanished millions of years ago, leaving only huge teeth to be found by modern archaeologists. They literally disappeared with very few traces left. Scientists believe that over time, deep sea levels dropped and the ocean's temperature went down rapidly. Over a third of all marine life was wiped out as the oceans cooled and the number of animals at the bottom of the food chain plummeted. This had a catastrophic effect on the hungry predators at the top. Sorry guys. It became way too cold for these sun-loving sharks too, which made it difficult for them to reproduce since they gave birth in warm waters. The Megalodon is usually described as a sort of great white shark, but this is just a common myth. In fact, the ancestors of today's great white existed at the same time as the Meg, but they weren't best buddies and were even in competition with each other. The great white shark was a better hunter using its smaller size and agility to snap up the Meg's prey quickly. They were also known to eat Meg pups, who were only half their size. This didn't exactly help the whole extinction thing. While a great white was no match for an adult Meg in a head-to-head fight, they sure weren't scared of stealing their food. This only left the bigger fish and whales for the Meg, but its food supplies began to run out as whales swam to the cooler new seas. The whales adapted to prefer the colder temperatures, leaving our friend the Meg behind. The Megalodons either starved or were frozen into extinction by the Ice Age. Rather than a great white, the Megalodon is more like a modern bull shark. It had a short snout, a flat lower jaw, and huge pectoral fins to support its massive weight and size. As scary as they are, these sharks were actually caring family guys. Several Megalodon nursery areas have been discovered in Florida, Maryland, and Panama. They gave birth to their young in shallow water environments. We know this from discovering loads of tiny Megalodon teeth found in these areas. I wonder if they had nannies too.